The name of the most feared duke in England appeared on Beatrice Arden's dance card like a sentence passed in silk and ink. For one sharp second, the sound of Lady Hardwicke's charity ball fell away. Though the orchestra still played beneath the blaze of chandeliers, and the floor of polished oak still flashed with satin slippers and black evening shoes, Beatrice stared at the card hanging from her wrist by its frayed ivory cord, certain she had misread it. She had not. There, written in Cressida Vane's looping hand, in the final empty space reserved for the last waltz, was the name no sensible young lady dared approach without invitation. His Grace the Duke of Alder-mere. Beatrice did not lift her head at once. She felt the heat of the ballroom, the brush of lace at her throat, and the small sting where one of her mended gloves had split again along the seam. Around her, Mayfair glittered as though no cruel thing had ever been born beneath candlelight. Ladies in pearl-trimmed gowns drifted past with fans half raised. Gentlemen bent over gloved hands. Mothers measured fortunes with their eyes. Every laugh sounded polished, every compliment softened by breeding. Yet Beatrice knew better than Zost how easily refinement could hide a knife. "There," Miss Cressida Vane said, her voice sweet enough to pass for kindness if one did not know her. "Now you need not complain of being neglected, cousin." Beatrice looked up. Cressida stood before her in a gown of pale blue silk that had cost more than Beatrice's entire wardrobe for the year. A necklace of seed pearls gleamed at her throat. Beside her, Lady Octavia Vane held her fan like a shield and wore the calm expression of a woman who had never raised her voice because she had never needed to. Sir Percival Vane lingered half a step behind them, his smile stiff beneath his carefully trimmed whiskers. To any stranger they appeared a benevolent family, encouraging a shy dependent relation to enjoy the evening. To Beatrice, they were a wall closing in. "You wrote His Grace's name?" Beatrice said softly. "Yes," Cressida replied. "Isn't it grand? You have spent the entire evening beside the lemonade, as though you were part of the table. Mamma thought it would be charitable to help you make yourself known." Lady Octavia's fan opened with a whisper. "Do not look so stricken, Beatrice. It is only a dance card. A young woman of your position ought to be grateful for any opportunity to appear lively." Beatrice's position. The phrase had followed her for 6 years, ever since her father's death, had left her beneath Sir Percival's guardianship and Lady Octavia's roof. Her position meant she wore gowns altered from Cressida's discards, smiled when addressed, and made herself useful without appearing to notice that she was useful. It meant she read aloud to Lady Octavia when her ladyship had a headache, copied invitations until her fingers cramped, and sat against walls at assemblies, while Cressida collected partners like trophies. It meant that when guests asked whether Miss Arden was still with you, Lady Octavia smiled and answered, "For the present," as though Beatrice were a visiting umbrella forgotten in the hall. Beatrice had learned not to blush at such things. Blushing gave people evidence that they had succeeded. Tonight, however, Cressida had chosen her weapon well. The Duke of Alder-mere did not dance with unknown young ladies. He barely danced at all. He appeared at society events with the grim necessity of a man attending a legal obligation, spoke to no one. Longer than courtesy required, and left behind a roomful of women wondering whether they had been judged and found wanting. Mothers feared him. Debutantes admired him from a distance. Men lowered their voices when he passed. There were stories about ruined gamblers, exposed trustees, and ambitious families who had mistaken his silence for weakness. Beatrice did not know which tales were true, but the result was enough. No one approached Adrian Vale unless he first gave permission. "I cannot present myself to him," Beatrice said. "Of course you can," Cressida answered. "His name is plainly written. Unless you mean to insult his grace by refusing." Beatrice heard the trap close. If she refused, Lady Octavia would accuse her of pride. If she obeyed, the Duke would reject her before half of London. If she said the name had been written without her consent, Cressida would widen her blue eyes and ask why Beatrice had become so dramatic over a harmless jest. Sir Percival stepped nearer. The scent of his cologne, sharp and expensive, cut through the sweeter perfumes of the room. "You will not make a scene," he murmured. "Not in Lady Hardwicke's house. Not tonight." His tone was low enough that no one else heard it, but Beatrice felt the old command in it, the one he used whenever her father's name threatened to rise between them. "I did not ask for this, sir. You ask for very little," he said, smiling toward a passing acquaintance. "That is one of your few virtues. Preserve it." Something in his expression troubled her more than Cressida's cruelty. He was not merely amused, he was watchful, almost eager. Beatrice glanced toward the far end of the ballroom, where the Duke stood beneath a gilt mirror, speaking with an elderly marquess. He was taller than the men around him, dressed in severe black evening clothes, relieved only by white linen and the dark gleam of a signet ring. His face was not handsome in the easy, charming way that encouraged foolish hope. It was composed, angular, and unreadable. A man carved for judgment rather than flirtation. Even at a distance, he seemed apart from the glittering room, as though society had admitted him because rank required it, and feared him because conscience did. "Go on," Cressida whispered. "The waltz will begin soon. You would not want to keep a duke waiting." Beatrice held the dance card more tightly, the ivory edge pressed into her palm. It had belonged to her mother once, a delicate little thing, with faint flowers painted along the border, and a silk cord worn thin from age. Beatrice had brought it tonight because Lady Octavia had insisted she needed some ornament, then laughed when the old cord caught on her glove. It was the only object she owned that had not been chosen for her by the Vane family. She would not let Cressida see her clutch it, like a shield. "Your glove," Cressida said, her gaze dropping. "How unfortunate. Perhaps His Grace will think it charming. A little poverty gives character, doesn't it?" "Cressida," Lady Octavia said, not as a rebuke, but as a warning to keep her voice graceful. Cressida smiled. "I only mean that Beatrice has such dignity." "Everyone says so. Poor dear Beatrice, always so dignified." The words were quiet, but not quiet enough. A lady nearby turned her head. Then another. Beatrice felt a tension gather. It began as a small ripple, no louder than silk moving over silk, yet it travelled faster than music. Miss Arden had the Duke of Alder-mere's name on her card. Miss Arden was going to approach him. Miss Arden, who had not been asked to dance once all evening. Beatrice stood very still. She could retreat. She could laugh and pretend the card had been spoiled. She could tear the cord and let the ivory fall beneath someone's shoe. But each choice would become another story, told by someone else. She had lived too long inside stories arranged for her by the Vane family. Ungrateful, dependent, plain, difficult. Fortunate to be tolerated. Her father had once told her that dignity was not the same as obedience. She had forgotten the sound of his voice in many things, but not that. "Very well," she said. Cressida blinked, disappointed that there were no tears. Lady Octavia's mouth tightened. Sir Percival's hand closed around the head of his cane. Beatrice lowered her shoulders, smoothed the front of her faded cream gown, and stepped away from the safety of the refreshment table. The ballroom seemed much longer once she began to cross it. Couples parted in small, curious shifts. A gentleman she had met twice looked at her, then looked away with the pained embarrassment of a man watching someone else walk into rain. A matron lifted her fan to hide a whisper. Beatrice kept her pace measured, not hurried, not hesitant. Each step felt impossibly loud. The orchestra drew out the last notes of the previous dance, and in the hush before applause, her movement became more visible. She understood then the full design of the thing. The final waltz was not merely a dance. It was the moment everyone watched, the moment when partners were remembered, the moment when a refusal could fall like a curtain over a woman's name. She could feel Cressida's gaze at her back, bright with anticipation. She could feel Lady Octavia's satisfaction, Sir Percival's strange impatience, the room's appetite for discomfort disguised as curiosity. Yet Beatrice did not stop. She would not give them the pleasure of seeing her stumble. When she reached the edge of the Duke's circle, the elderly Marquess noticed her first and faltered mid-sentence. The Duke turned his head. His eyes, dark and steady, settled on her face. He did not look surprised. That unsettled her more than surprise would have done. Beatrice dipped into a curtsy, low enough to honor his rank, not so low that it became apology. "Your Grace," she said. Her voice was calm. She thanked heaven for that small mercy. "Forgive the interruption." The Marquess withdrew with the instinct of a man who sensed a storm and preferred not to be named in it. The Duke said nothing. Up close, he was not merely formidable. He was precise. His gaze took in the repaired glove, the too careful set of her mouth, the old dance card trembling despite her effort to still it. Beatrice forced herself to continue. "I believe your name has been placed upon my card." She lifted the ivory card toward him. The Duke did not take it immediately. For one unbearable breath, the whole ballroom seemed to lean closer. Then Adrian Vale accepted the card between two gloved fingers and looked down. His expression did not change, but something in him went very still. His eyes moved from his own name to the faint scrape where another line had been erased, then to the frayed silk cord, then back to Beatrice. Behind her, somewhere across the glittering room, Cressida gave a soft, delighted laugh. Beatrice kept her chin level and waited for the rejection she had been sent to receive. The Duke of Alder-mere held Beatrice's dance card as though it were not a lady's delicate ornament, but a document submitted for judgment. He did not glance toward the laughing cousin across the room. He did not ask the elderly Marquess what had happened. He studied the card, and in that silence, Beatrice felt every eye in the ballroom fasten more tightly upon her. The orchestra had not yet begun the next waltz. Musicians adjusted sheets of music. A violin gave one thin, searching note. Somewhere behind Beatrice, a fan snapped shut. She kept her hands folded before her, though one glove had split further along the seam, and the cool air touched the inside of her wrist. She wished she could tuck it away, but movement would betray nerves, and nerves were what Cressida had been waiting to see. His Grace looked at his own name again. The ink was too dark, too fresh, too eager. Beneath it lay the pale scar of another erased line. Beatrice had noticed only the humiliation. He noticed the method. "Miss Arden," he said at last. His voice was low, controlled, and clear enough to carry, only because the room had grown so hungry for his answer. Beatrice lifted her eyes. "Yes, Your Grace, did you write this?" The question was not accusation. That almost undid her. "No, Your Grace." "Did you ask for my name to be written here?" "No." A murmur moved through the nearest guests. Beatrice felt her face warm, but she did not lower her gaze. "I beg your pardon. I should not have interrupted you." She reached for the card, hoping to reclaim it and retreat before he completed the rejection. The Duke did not return it. His fingers closed lightly over the ivory edge, not possessively, but with finality. "You have not interrupted me." He looked over her shoulder then, and the temperature of his expression changed so subtly that only Beatrice, standing close, could see it. The room saw a duke turning his attention toward the crowd. Beatrice saw a man marking the source of cruelty. Across the ballroom, Cressida's delighted smile faltered. Lady Octavia's fan paused before her chin. Sir Percival stood rigid, no longer pretending to admire the chandeliers. "The last waltz is still unclaimed," the Duke said. Beatrice could hardly hear past the sudden beating of her heart. "Your Grace, there is no obligation." "I am aware of my obligations." His gaze returned to hers. "This is not one of them." The words struck the air with the quiet force of a door closing. Then he offered his hand, not carelessly, not as a man indulging a joke. He did it with the full gravity of public choice. "Will you give me the final dance, Miss Arden?" For a moment, she thought she had misunderstood. Her mind, trained by years in Vane House to search for hidden costs, refused to accept kindness without examining its edges. Perhaps this was pity. Perhaps the Duke was so bored by society that he had decided to make a spectacle of generosity. Perhaps a man of his rank could afford a moment of mercy because no one would dare laugh at him for it. Beatrice saw the dancers waiting. She saw Cressida's hands tighten around her fan. She saw Lady Octavia's lips part in disbelief. If she refused now, she would insult him and confirm the awkwardness. If she accepted, she would become more visible than she had ever wished to be. "Your Grace," she said, soft enough that only he could hear, "they meant for you to refuse me, I know." The answer was immediate. Her breath caught. He knew. He had known before she found the courage to say it. That knowledge did not make his face gentle, exactly, but it altered something in his eyes. "Then you need not continue their entertainment," she whispered. "I dislike unfinished cruelties," he said. "Come." Beatrice placed her hand in his. The contact was formal, gloved, and entirely proper, yet the steadiness of it traveled through her like warmth. He did not grip. He did not pull. He waited until she moved of her own accord, and only then led her onto the open floor. The orchestra began as if released from a spell. The first measures of the waltz rose beneath the chandeliers. Couples who had prepared to take their places hesitated, then stepped back, leaving more space than courtesy required. No one wished to collide with the Duke of Alder-mere. No one wished to miss what he was doing. Beatrice felt the ballroom widen around them, a polished island of attention. She had never danced before so many people who were watching for the wrong reason. Adrian Vale bowed with exact propriety. Beatrice curtsied. When his hand settled at the proper distance from her back, and hers rested upon his sleeve, she felt how disciplined he was. There was nothing careless in the way he moved. He guided without display, turned without haste, and gave her enough space to breathe. "You dance well," he said. "That surprises you?" she asked before she could stop herself. A faint line appeared at the corner of his mouth. It was not quite a smile. "Very little surprises me. Then I am sorry to have added to the evening's disappointments." "I did not say I was disappointed." She looked at him then, truly looked. The Duke's attention did not wander to Cressida, or to the matrons whispering behind their fans, or to the gentlemen pretending not to stare. He watched Beatrice as though she were the only person in the room whose answer mattered. That was more unsettling than cruelty. Cruelty had rules. Cruel people wanted fear, humiliation, obedience. This was something else. "You should know," Beatrice said, choosing each word, "that I did not seek your notice." "I know that as well. How?" His gaze dropped briefly to the card, still held in his left hand. He had kept it. "Your name was written in a different pressure from mine. There is another line beneath it. The cord is nearly torn, but it has been handled with care until tonight. Your glove split recently, likely when someone forced the card toward you, or when you held it too tightly. You approached me as a condemned woman might approach a magistrate, not as a young lady chasing a duke." Beatrice missed half a step. He corrected the turn so smoothly that no one nearby could notice. Heat rose behind her eyes, which was intolerable. She would not cry in front of him. She would not cry in front of them. That is a great deal to gather from a dance card. People confess more than they intend through small damage. His voice lowered. "Who sent you?" The question waited between them. Beatrice felt Sir Percival's warning like a hand around her throat. "You will not make a scene, not tonight." She could say Cressida. She could say Lady Octavia. She could tell him everything, and let his rank fall upon Vane House, like winter. But the roof above her head, the servants who would be blamed, the letters of her late father, locked away somewhere she had never been allowed to see. All of it held her silent. She had survived by knowing when truth would not yet be believed. "No one of consequence," she said. The Duke's expression hardened, not at her, but around the lie. "That is rarely true. It is true enough for tonight. Miss Arden, do you always protect those who injure you?" The words were quiet. They reached too deep. "No," she said. "Sometimes I protect what little remains to me." He did not answer at once. The music carried them through another turn, past a line of women whose faces were composed into fascination. Beatrice saw Cressida staring, as though the world had committed a personal offense. Lady Octavia had gone pale beneath her powder. Sir Percival no longer looked eager. He looked calculating. "Your family does not appear pleased," the Duke said. "Many families dislike surprises. Was this one?" "For them, yes." This time the Duke's mouth did curve slightly. For me, less so. You expected to be used in a ballroom prank. I expected someone in this room to attempt something foolish before the night ended. I had not expected the intended victim to hold her head so well. Beatrice felt the compliment like a hand hovering near a bruise without touching it. I am not the victim of anything, Your Grace. No, I am only a poor relation with an unfortunate dance card. A poor relation can still be wronged, and a duke can still be mistaken. That earned a clearer change in his face. Not amusement. Interest. It was gone almost as soon as it appeared, but Beatrice saw it, and something inside her steadied. He did not want her simpering gratitude. He was listening for the shape of her mind. Perhaps, he said, but not often. How fortunate for England. The sentence escaped before she could recall it. For one dreadful heartbeat, she feared she had gone too far. Then the Duke looked away, and she realized he was concealing another near smile. The waltz continued, but the room had changed. The whispers no longer cut in the same direction. Beatrice could feel the question moving through society's polished ranks. Why had he chosen her? Why had he kept dancing? Why had he not discarded the joke and the girl attached to it? A moment meant to reduce her had become something else, and no one knew how to name it. That uncertainty was a strange, fragile shelter. When the final notes approached, Beatrice wished with sudden pain that music did not have to end. The thought startled her. She did not wish to be seen by this crowd. She did not wish to owe a duke anything. Yet for the length of the dance, she had stood in the center of the room and not disappeared. As the last chord faded, Adrian guided her to a stop. He bowed. She curtsied. Applause rose around them, thinner than usual, uncertain and delayed. The Duke returned the ivory card to her at last, his fingers brushing only the edge. "Keep this safe," he said. "Why?" she asked. His eyes moved once more toward the erased line beneath his name. "Because someone went to trouble over it." Beatrice closed her hand around the card. It was only a cruel joke. Cruel jokes often reveal serious motives. Before she could answer, a ripple opened behind her. Cressida approached with Lady Octavia close at her side, both smiling too brightly. "Beatrice," Cressida said, her voice light and brittle. "How charming." "We were beginning to wonder whether you had forgotten the rest of us." Beatrice turned, still breathless from the dance, still holding the card. The Duke did not step away. Instead, he remained beside her, close enough that the entire ballroom could see he had not dismissed her. Lady Octavia's eyes flicked toward him, then to Beatrice, with a warning sharpened by panic. Sir Percival followed more slowly, his expression smoothed back into civility. "Your Grace," he said with a bow. "You are generous to indulge our young cousin's little confusion." The Duke's gaze settled on him. Was she confused? Sir Percival's smile tightened. Beatrice felt the room listen again. Cressida laughed softly, too quickly. "Oh, it was nothing, truly. Beatrice is so shy, we only encouraged her." "Encouragement," Adrian said, "is an interesting word." He looked at Beatrice then, not commanding her, not rescuing her without permission, simply giving her the space to speak if she chose. But Beatrice could not yet choose open war in Lady Hardwicke's ballroom. Not with Sir Percival watching her, as though one wrong word could cost her more than pride. She lowered her eyes only far enough to seem proper. "My cousin wished me to enjoy the final dance," she said. The lie was graceful. It tasted bitter. Cressida's relief flashed too soon. The Duke saw it. Beatrice knew he saw it, because his face became still again. "Then Miss Vane's wish has been fulfilled," he said. "Good evening." It was a dismissal, delivered so politely that no one could object. Cressida flushed. Lady Octavia curtsied with rigid elegance. Sir Percival bowed. Beatrice prepared to follow them, but the Duke spoke once more, his voice low enough to bind the words only to her. "Miss Arden," she looked back. "Yes, Your Grace, this evening is not finished." Her heart gave one hard, bewildered beat. "For whom?" "For whoever believed I would not notice." Then he bowed, leaving her with the restored weight of the dance card in her palm, and the first dangerous suspicion that the most feared man in England had seen far more than she had meant to show. Cressida's smile did not break until the Duke of Alder-mere turned his back on her. Then it trembled at the corners. Not enough for the room to call it anger, but enough for Beatrice to see the crack beneath the polish. Lady Octavia saw it too, and her fan rose at once, hiding the lower half of her face, as if mother and daughter had rehearsed the gesture for every social emergency. Sir Percival alone kept his expression smooth, but his hand had tightened around the head of his cane until the knuckles shone white beneath the ballroom light. "What a curious little triumph you have had, Beatrice," Cressida said, so softly that the nearest guests would hear only affection. "You must tell me how one looks so helpless without quite meaning to." Beatrice held the ivory dance card against her palm. The Duke's final words still moved through her with quiet force. "This evening is not finished." For whoever believed I would not notice. She did not know whether that was a promise, a warning, or a danger she had been foolish enough to welcome. "I did not ask him to dance," she said. "No," Lady Octavia replied, closing her fan with a whisper. "You merely placed yourself before him in a manner no well-bred young woman would mistake. You told me to go. We encouraged you not to mope beside the refreshments." "There is a difference." Cressida gave a small laugh, then reached as if to touch the card. Beatrice moved it just beyond her fingers. The movement was slight. It was also deliberate. Cressida's eyes sharpened. "How possessive you are of a spoiled little card. It is mine. So are your old gloves, and I do not see anyone admiring those." "Cressida," Sir Percival said. His voice remained pleasant, but Cressida obeyed at once. That, more than the rebuke, unsettled Beatrice. Her cousin was not usually stopped when she wounded. Tonight Sir Percival wanted control. He bowed toward a passing lady, waited until she moved on, then lowered his voice. "We are leaving." Beatrice looked toward the ballroom doors, then toward the place where the Duke had stood. He was speaking now with Lady Hardwicke, his dark head bent slightly as she addressed him. He did not look at Beatrice, yet she felt, absurdly, that he knew whether she was still in the room. "The ball is not over," Cressida protested. "Lord Westbury promised me the supper dance." "Lord Westbury has been delivered from a grave misfortune," Sir Percival said. "Fetch your wrap." Cressida went pale with outrage, but Lady Octavia's hand closed around her elbow. "Do as your uncle says." In that moment, Beatrice understood that the Duke's dance had done more than embarrass Cressida. It had frightened them, not with scandal, with attention. The thought settled inside her like a candle being lit in a locked room. Sir Percival had wanted her humiliated. He had not expected her to become interesting. They moved through the edge of the ballroom in a formation that looked like family concern to anyone who did not know the truth. Lady Octavia walked beside Beatrice, smiling at acquaintances while speaking through her teeth. "You will not look back. I was not intending to. Do not grow impertinent, because a duke indulged you for 10 minutes. The waltz was less than 10 minutes, Aunt." Lady Octavia's smile brightened for a pair of elderly sisters passing by. "There, that tone. You see, Percival? She is quite overcome with herself." Beatrice fell silent. Words were coins in Vane House. One spent them only when the purchase was worth the cost. At the entrance hall, footmen moved among cloaks and wraps. A chill came through the opened doors, carrying the damp smell of London streets after midnight. Beatrice's cream gown, thin from alteration, suddenly felt inadequate. Cressida drew her blue silk wrap around her shoulders and leaned close. "Everyone will say he pitied you, perhaps. They'll say you looked ridiculous, perhaps. They'll say you trapped him." Beatrice turned her head. "Did I?" Cressida's mouth closed. For one small second, the truth stood between them, naked and ugly. Then Lady Octavia stepped in. Enough. Into the carriage. The ride to Vane House lasted less than a mile, yet it felt longer than the entire evening. Cressida sat opposite Beatrice with her face turned to the window, refusing to look at anyone. Lady Octavia kept both hands folded over her fan, every line of her body rigid with contained displeasure. Sir Percival stared into the dimness beyond the glass. He did not speak until the carriage turned away from the brighter streets of Mayfair into the quieter square where Vane House stood. "You will not mention the Duke's words again," he said. Beatrice looked at him. "Which words, sir?" His gaze cut to her. "Do not play the innocent with me." Cressida leaned forward. "What did he say to you at the end?" "He wished me good evening." "That's not true. I saw him speak." "Then you already know more than I do." Cressida's cheeks colored. Lady Octavia made a soft sound of disgust. This is precisely what comes of allowing a dependent girl to mistake manners for admiration. A man such as Alder-mere does not lower himself without a reason. If he danced with you, it was to make some point known only to himself. "Perhaps the point was that public cruelty is vulgar," Beatrice said. The words were out before caution could stop them. The carriage seemed to contract. Sir Percival's face changed, not dramatically, that was not his way. His eyes simply lost their social glaze. "You will remember who keeps you housed, clothed, and respectable." Beatrice felt the familiar pressure of the debt that had never been written down but was always demanded. "I remember. Do you? Because tonight you stood before half of London and allowed a duke to question our conduct. He questioned the card. He questioned us. Silence followed. The carriage wheels struck a rut, and Cressida caught the strap beside her with a sharp inhale. Beatrice looked down at the ivory card. In the poor light, Adrian Vale's name looked darker than before, as though the ink had sunk deeper into the surface. Beneath it, she could still see the rubbed place where another name had once been. She had not imagined that. The Duke had seen it too. "Give me that," Lady Octavia said. Beatrice closed her fingers around the card. "No." Cressida turned from the window. No, Lady Octavia's voice was dangerously soft. "Beatrice, do not be absurd. It was my mother's." "Your mother," Sir Percival said, "left many sentimental scraps and very little practical sense." Beatrice went still. There were rooms in her memory where her mother still stood in pale muslin, laughing quietly as she fastened Beatrice's hair ribbon. The memory had no place in Sir Percival's mouth. "Do not speak of her." Cressida's brows lifted. "How grand she sounds." Sir Percival's cane struck the carriage floor once, not hard, but enough to end the exchange. "You will keep your mother's trinket, since you have made yourself so dramatic over it. But you will put it away, and tomorrow you will write a note of apology to Lady Hardwicke for leaving early." "And to his grace?" Beatrice asked. The question slipped out, because she wanted to see what it would do. Sir Percival's silence answered first. Lady Octavia's fan snapped open, although there was no need for it in the dark carriage. Cressida looked from her mother to her uncle. Why would she write to him? "She will not," Sir Percival said. "No communication will be sent to Alder-mere House from this family unless I approve it." There it was again. Fear dressed as authority. Beatrice tucked the card into the small reticule at her side and said nothing more. When they reached Vane House, the footman opened the carriage door, and the family entered beneath a portico lit by 2 lamps that smoked in the damp air. The house was narrow, respectable, and tired in ways Lady Octavia worked hard to conceal. The carpets were still fine, but threadbare along the most used paths. The silver shone, but there was less of it on display each month. Guests never noticed. Beatrice noticed because she mended what could be mended and heard what creditors' knocks sounded like at the servants' entrance. In the hall, Lady Octavia removed her gloves with exact care. "You will go upstairs." Beatrice nodded. "Yes, Aunt. You will not ring for tea. You have had enough excitement." Cressida smiled again, restored by the small cruelty. Poor Beatrice. One dance and no supper. How tragic. Beatrice turned toward the staircase. She had taken only 2 steps when Sir Percival spoke. "Wait." She stopped. He handed his hat and gloves to the footman without looking at him. "You will bring me the dance card." Lady Octavia watched Beatrice closely. Cressida's eyes brightened. Beatrice felt the card in her reticule like a pulse. Her refusal in the carriage had been unexpected. A second refusal would be rebellion. She thought of the Duke's fingers holding the ivory edge. "Keep this safe, because someone went to trouble over it." "It is only a keepsake," she said. "Then you should have no objection. My mother's keepsake." Sir Percival walked toward her slowly. He did not need to threaten. The hall itself seemed to understand him. The butler looked away. The footman lowered his gaze. Lady Octavia waited for Beatrice to yield. Beatrice reached into her reticule. Her fingers closed around the card, then shifted to the torn scrap of ribbon Cressida had pulled loose earlier that evening. She drew out the ribbon instead and held it in her palm. "The cord broke," she said. "I put the card in my sewing box before we left Lady Hardwicke's. I did not want to lose it. It was a lie but a small one, and desperation made it graceful." Cressida frowned. "I didn't see you do that. You were watching His Grace." The footman made the smallest sound, quickly swallowed. Lady Octavia's eyes narrowed. Sir Percival studied Beatrice for so long that she feared he would demand her reticule. Then he stepped back. "Fetch it in the morning." "Yes, sir." "And Beatrice." She looked at him because not looking would be taken as defiance. "Do not imagine that a single dance changes your circumstances. No, sir, you remain here by our generosity." "Yes, sir. See that you earn it." The words landed softly, which made them worse. Beatrice curtsied, then climbed the stairs without running. She felt Cressida's anger at her back, Lady Octavia's suspicion, Sir Percival's calculating silence. In her small room beneath the sloping roof, the fire had gone out. The air was cold enough to make her fingers stiff as she closed the door. Only then did she take the ivory dance card from her reticule. She sat on the narrow bed and held it beneath the moonlight. Adrian Vale's name remained there, dark and impossible. Beneath it, the erased line showed faintly, a ghost of another intention. Beatrice touched the worn painted flowers along the border, and thought of her mother, of her father, of Sir Percival's sharpness whenever old papers were mentioned. A cruel joke should have ended when the laughter did. This one had followed her home. She opened her sewing box and slid the card beneath a folded piece of lace at the bottom, under a packet of dull needles and a thimble with a dented rim. Then she sat very still, hungry, cold, and more awake than she had been in years. Downstairs, a door closed. Another opened, voices murmured below, too low to understand. Beatrice rose and crossed to the floorboard near the washstand, the one that carried sound from Sir Percival's study when the house was quiet. She heard Lady Octavia first. "You were a fool to involve Alder-mere." Then Sir Percival, strained and low. "I did not involve him. Cressida chose the name. You told her to make it memorable." A pause. Cressida's voice came next, smaller than before. It was only meant to make Beatrice look ridiculous. Sir Percival answered in a tone Beatrice had never heard from him. Fear had stripped it bare. "Nothing involving that girl's name must reach Alder-mere again. Do you understand me? Nothing. Not the card, not her father, and not the accounts." Beatrice stopped breathing. The house settled around her. The words remained her father, the accounts. She pressed one hand over her mouth, not from grief, but from the sudden terror of understanding that tonight's humiliation had touched something hidden beneath it. Then, from the street below, came the distant sound of carriage wheels slowing before Vane House. Beatrice moved to the window. A dark carriage stood under the lamps for only a moment before rolling on, but she saw enough to recognize the crest on the door. A falcon beneath a ducal coronet. Alder-mere. By 9 o'clock the next morning, Lady Octavia had already destroyed the first calling card from Alder-mere House. Beatrice saw it happen from the shadowed end of the breakfast room, where she had been instructed to pour coffee but not sit. The card arrived on a silver tray in the hand of Harris, the butler, whose face revealed nothing except the strain of understanding that he carried trouble engraved on expensive paper. Lady Octavia took one glance at the bold black lettering, went perfectly still, and then tore the card in two with such calm precision that Cressida stopped buttering her toast. "A mistake," Lady Octavia said. "There is no need to mention it." Sir Percival looked up from the newspaper, though Beatrice noticed he had not turned a page in several minutes. "Whose card?" "No one of consequence," Lady Octavia replied. The lie had scarcely left her mouth when Cressida leaned over the table and saw the torn halves in her mother's hand. Her face changed. "Alder-mere," she whispered. Beatrice's fingers tightened around the coffee pot. She had not slept. The night had left its marks beneath her eyes and inside her thoughts. Her father. The accounts. The carriage with the falcon crest rolling past in the darkness. She had told herself that exhaustion had made her imagine it. But now the Duke's name lay torn beside Lady Octavia's plate. It was real. He had not forgotten. Worse for the Vane family, he had not chosen to forget. Do not say that name as though summoning him, Lady Octavia snapped. Harris, remove this. The butler reached for the torn card. Before he could take it, the doorbell rang. Not the modest pull of a tradesman, not the uncertain knock of a messenger. It rang with the grave assurance of a household that expected to be admitted. Sir Percival folded the newspaper. Who is at the door? Harris bowed. I shall see, sir. No one ate. Even the clock on the mantel seemed loud. Beatrice remained where she stood, one hand still on the coffee pot, the other hidden in the fold of her skirt. The ivory dance card was no longer in her reticule. Before dawn, she had moved it from her sewing box to the narrow space behind the loose panel beneath her washstand. She did not know why, except that Sir Percival had asked for it, and the Duke had said to keep it safe. Harris returned with another card. This time, the footman behind him wore the dark green and silver livery of Alder-mere House. He stood in the hall beyond the open door with such rigid propriety that Lady Octavia could not pretend he was a casual servant. Harris offered the second card to Sir Percival. From His Grace, the Duke of Alder-mere, sir. His footman awaits a reply. Sir Percival took it. Beatrice could not read the words from where she stood, but she knew the moment he did. His mouth hardened. Lady Octavia rose halfway from her chair. Percival. Cressida's eyes were bright with panic and curiosity. What does he want? Sir Percival did not answer her. He looked at Beatrice. That look crossed the room with the cold force of possession. Miss Arden, he said, you will go upstairs. Beatrice set down the coffee pot with care. Yes, sir. At once. She curtsied, but before she could reach the door, Harris cleared his throat in a manner so discreet it became impossible to ignore. Sir, the footman also conveyed that His Grace intends to make a morning call at 11, provided the household is at home. Lady Octavia made a sound too small to be called a gasp. Sir Percival's face reddened, then paled. A duke did not ask whether a lesser household wished to receive him in the same way another man might. A duke gave society an opportunity to remain polite. Refusal would be noticed. Acceptance would be dangerous. Beatrice understood it then. The first card could be torn because no witness had carried its meaning beyond the breakfast room. The second had arrived in public form, borne by a servant whose livery announced rank at the door. The Duke had not merely called. He had made the call impossible to erase. At 11, Vane House looked more respectable than it had any right to look. Fires were lit in rooms usually kept cold until afternoon. The drawing-room curtains were arranged to hide the faded edges of the carpet. The silver tea service appeared, along with the better china that Lady Octavia claimed was too delicate for ordinary use. Beatrice had been sent upstairs, then summoned back, then inspected, as though every pin in her hair were a political threat. Lady Octavia chose a grey gown for her, plain and high-necked, the sort of dress that made youth look apologetic. Cressida wore rose muslin and a pearl clasp at her throat. The clasp was new. Beatrice saw Sir Percival notice her noticing it. You will say very little, Lady Octavia murmured as they waited. If His Grace asks about last night, you were overwhelmed. If he asks why you approached him, you misunderstood your cousin's encouragement. If he asks anything else, you will look to me. What if he asks whether I wish him to call again? Beatrice asked. Cressida laughed. Why would he? Lady Octavia's eyes cut to her daughter, then back to Beatrice. You will not invite further attention. The door opened before Beatrice could answer. Harris entered. His Grace, the Duke of Alder-mere. Adrian Vale brought the room to stillness simply by stepping into it. He was dressed for morning in dark blue, with gloves in one hand and a hat carried by Harris behind him. In daylight, his severity seemed less theatrical and more dangerous, because it did not depend on candles, music, or rumor. He bowed first to Lady Octavia, then to Cressida, then to Sir Percival. Last, his eyes found Beatrice. He did not linger, yet the acknowledgement was exact. She was not furniture. She was not an embarrassment temporarily kept near the window. "Sir Percival," he said. "Lady Octavia, Miss Vane, Miss Arden." Lady Octavia curtsied with a smile so polished it might have cut glass. "Your Grace honours us." "We feared there had been some misunderstanding after last evening." "There was," Adrian said. "That is why I came." Cressida's colour rose. Sir Percival gestured toward a chair. "We are always pleased to receive your Grace, naturally." Beatrice was quite overcome after the ball. She has a sensitive nature. Does she? Adrian looked at Beatrice. "Miss Arden, are you unwell?" There it was again. A question addressed to her, as though her answer had value. Lady Octavia's fingers tightened around her fan. Beatrice felt the old habit rise, the one that told her to smooth the room, protect the household, and make herself smaller. Then she remembered the Duke's carriage outside the house, and the words through the floorboard. Not the card, not her father, and not the accounts. "I am tired, Your Grace," she said. "Not unwell." His eyes rested on her face for a moment. A useful distinction. Lady Octavia moved quickly. "Tea, Your Grace?" "Thank you." The formalities took several minutes. They were necessary, and everyone in the room knew it. Tea was poured. Weather was mentioned. Lady Hardwicke's charity was praised. Cressida attempted a light remark about crowded ballrooms, but it withered under the Duke's silence. When the tray had been set aside, Adrian placed a small folded packet on the table before him. "I also bring a note from my mother, Lady Augusta Vale, the Dowager Duchess of Alder-mere. She asked that I convey her compliments to Miss Arden." Cressida's lips parted. Lady Octavia's fan stopped moving. A Dowager Duchess's compliments were not affection. They were notice. Notice could lift a woman, or ruin anyone foolish enough to mistreat her too openly. "How very kind," Lady Octavia said. "Miss Arden made an impression last evening," Adrian replied. "My mother values composure." Beatrice felt the words strike the room in quiet reversal. Last night they had called her helpless, dramatic. Overcome, he called her composed. Sir Percival leaned forward. "Your Grace, I must apologize if my niece caused any awkwardness. She is not much in society, and perhaps she misread the spirit of the evening. I did not find Miss Arden awkward." "You are generous." "No," Adrian said. "I am accurate." Silence fell. Beatrice looked down at her hands, not to hide, but because the sudden force of being defended without being diminished made her eyes sting. Lady Octavia recovered first. "Beatrice has always been grateful for our care. Haven't you, my dear?" Beatrice knew the answer expected. Gratitude was the chain polished until it resembled virtue. "I know what I owe," she said. Adrian's gaze sharpened slightly. "That is not the same thing." Sir Percival gave a short laugh. "Your Grace has a lawyer's ear. I have an ear for imprecision." Adrian turned to Beatrice fully. "Miss Arden, may I ask about the dance card from last evening?" Cressida almost spilled her tea. Lady Octavia set her cup down with a click. Beatrice felt every warning in the room converge upon her. "It is upstairs," she said. "Safe. Good." From the folded packet he drew a length of narrow silk cord, pale ivory, finer than anything Beatrice owned. The cord was nearly broken. "If you wish it replaced, my mother recommends this. She has a fondness for preserving old things that others mistake for useless." For the first time that morning, Beatrice nearly smiled. "Please thank her Grace. I shall." He did not offer the cord to Lady Octavia. He did not leave it on the table for Sir Percival to inspect. He held it until Beatrice rose and crossed the few feet between them. It was a small movement, entirely proper, and still Lady Octavia looked as if the world had tilted. Beatrice took the silk. Their gloved fingers did not touch. Somehow, the restraint made the moment more intimate than touch would have been. "Thank you, Your Grace. You are welcome." Then he asked the question Lady Octavia had feared. "May I call again?" Cressida's breath caught. Sir Percival began. "Your Adrian did not hard look at him." "I?" asked Miss Arden. Beatrice felt the room waiting, but this waiting was different from the ballroom. Last night they had waited for her shame. Now they waited for her choice. She thought of the roof above her head, Sir Percival's accounts, her mother's card, and the cold room upstairs, where she had hidden the only evidence that something was wrong. She thought of the Duke noticing erased ink when everyone else noticed only her humiliation. "Yes," she said. Her voice was quiet, but it did not break. "You may call again." Lady Octavia's smile froze. Cressida stared at Beatrice as though a chair had spoken. Sir Percival's hand closed over his knee. Adrian inclined his head, and for the first time since he had entered, there was something almost gentle in the gravity of his face. "Then I shall." He rose soon after, refusing any attempt to prolong or redirect the visit. At the door, he turned back to Sir Percival. "One more matter." Sir Percival stood with visible reluctance. "Your Grace, if Miss Arden is unwell, I trust the household will send word. If she is sent away from London, I trust you will also send word." The statement was courteous. It was also unmistakably a warning. Sir Percival bowed. Naturally, Adrian's eyes moved once to Beatrice, and in that brief look she understood that he had noticed more than the torn glove, more than the card, more than the fear in a room pretending to be respectable. Then he was gone, leaving Vane House quieter than before, and far more dangerous. Lady Octavia waited until the front door closed. Then she turned on Beatrice with a smile that had no warmth at all. "Well," she said, "you have acquired a protector." Beatrice held the new silk cord in her hand. It felt impossibly soft. "No, Aunt." She looked toward the hall where the Duke had vanished. "I think I have acquired a witness." Lady Octavia did not answer Beatrice at once. She looked at the silk cord in Beatrice's hand, as if it were not a narrow thread from the house of a duke, but a fuse laid across the drawing-room carpet. Cressida stood near the pianoforte, her rose muslin bright against the faded wallpaper, one hand pressed over the pearl clasp at her throat. Sir Percival had remained by the mantel since the Duke of Alder-mere's departure, staring into the cold grate, although no fire had been laid there since breakfast. For several breaths, no one moved. Then Lady Octavia smiled. It was the smile she wore when guests praised her household economy, or when creditors were announced as old family acquaintances. "A witness," she repeated. "What a theatrical word, Beatrice. One dance, one call, and now you speak as though you were the heroine of a novel." Beatrice folded the silk cord carefully over her fingers. "I spoke plainly, Aunt. Plain girls often mistake plainness for virtue." Cressida recovered enough to laugh. "Perhaps His Grace prefers virtue because he meets so little of it." "How dull for him." Sir Percival turned from the mantel. "Enough." Cressida's laugh died. Lady Octavia's fan halted in midair. Beatrice felt the atmosphere shift, not toward quiet, but toward calculation. Sir Percival crossed the room and stopped before her. In morning light, his respectability looked thinner. The perfect knot of his cravat could not conceal the tightness in his throat. "You will tell me exactly what Alder-mere said to you last night after the dance." "He said the evening wasn't finished." Lady Octavia's fan snapped shut. "Beatrice, that's what he said." Sir Percival's eyes narrowed. "And what did he mean?" "I don't know." The contraction came out in her speech because fear had made her more human than careful. Sir Percival noticed that too. He noticed everything that could be used later. "You will not encourage him. I didn't invite him here. You accepted his request to call again. He asked me. And you answered before your guardians could advise you." Beatrice looked at him then. "Am I a child, sir?" The room stilled. It was a small question, but inside Vane House, small questions could become rebellions. Cressida stared as if Beatrice had overturned the tea table. Lady Octavia's face sharpened with disbelief. Sir Percival stepped nearer, lowering his voice. "You are a young woman without fortune, protection, or standing beyond what this family permits. Do not confuse age with independence." The words found old wounds because they had been shaped for them. Beatrice had heard variations for years. Still this morning, they did not fit as easily. A duke had asked her permission. A duchess had sent her a cord. Those things did not free her, but they had changed the size of the room around her. "My father left me something," she said. She had not planned to speak the sentence. It rose because it had waited too long. Sir Percival's face changed so quickly that Lady Octavia looked at him. "Your father left debts, sentiment, and inconvenience," he said. "Mr. Edmund Arden was a charming man with charming failures. Do not dress memory as inheritance." Beatrice's fingers tightened around the silk. "There was a solicitor. There are always solicitors when men die badly. I remember papers. You remember candlelight and fever and your mother crying over trifles. You were a girl. I was child," he said. "And now you are old enough to understand that gratitude is wiser than curiosity." Cressida moved toward her mother, suddenly less amused. Lady Octavia placed a hand on her daughter's sleeve without looking away from Beatrice. "Percival, perhaps this conversation is unnecessary." "No," he said. "It is overdue." He returned his attention to Beatrice. "You will not mention your father to Alder-mere. You will not ask about papers. You will not pry into matters that do not concern you. If they concern my father, they concern me. They concern the household that took you in when no one else would." That lie had always been offered as bread, but today Beatrice tasted the mold beneath it. She curtsied because her body remembered what survival required. "May I go upstairs?" Lady Octavia answered before Sir Percival could. "You may go to the mending room. Cressida's hem came loose last night. Since you were the cause of our early return, you may repair what your foolishness interrupted." Beatrice bowed her head. It was easier than letting them see her eyes. "Yes, Aunt. The mending room was not truly a room, but a narrow chamber near the back stairs, where baskets of linen, old gowns, and household repairs gathered like quiet accusations." Beatrice sat by the small window with Cressida's blue silk across her lap, the Duke's silk cord hidden inside her sleeve, and the words from downstairs turning over in her mind. "Your father left debts. Do not ask about papers. Not the card, not her father, and not the accounts. Those sentences belonged together." She could feel it. She only lacked the thread. Below, the house resumed its ordinary motions. A bell rang. Footsteps passed. Someone scolded, a scullery maid. Beatrice bent over the hem, stitching with the clean precision Lady Octavia demanded. She had finished nearly half when a crash sounded from the passage. It was not loud enough to bring the whole house running, but it was loud enough to bring fear with it. Beatrice set the gown aside and opened the door. Nell Hopkins knelt beside a broken tray, her face white above her plain cap. Shards of china lay across the floorboards. Tea had spread in a brown stain toward the wall. "Oh, Miss Arden," Nell whispered. "I'm ruined." Beatrice glanced toward the stairs. "Who sent you?" "Miss Vane." She wanted tea in her room, then said it was too weak, then said to take it away before her mother saw. "I was hurrying." Nell's hands shook as she reached for a broken cup. Beatrice caught her wrist gently. "Don't cut yourself. Lady Octavia will take it from my wages. She'll say I'm careless. I can't spare it, miss. My mother needs the money." Beatrice looked at the tray, then at the stain creeping into the floorboards. It would be discovered within minutes. Cressida would deny impatience. Lady Octavia would blame the servant. The cost would fall where it always fell, on the person least able to bear it. Beatrice picked up the tray. "I broke it." Nell stared at her. "You didn't." "I was carrying Cressida's gown and came through too quickly." The tray slipped. "Miss Arden, you mustn't. I have been called clumsy before." Beatrice gave her the smallest smile. "It will not astonish anyone." Nell's eyes filled. "Why would you do that?" "Because one of us can better survive a scolding. But you shouldn't have to." The simple justice of the sentence struck Beatrice harder than Lady Octavia's insults. She crouched beside Nell and helped gather the larger pieces. "No," she said quietly. "I shouldn't. They cleaned enough to prevent anyone stepping on the shards." When Lady Octavia's housekeeper appeared, Beatrice accepted the reprimand with lowered eyes and did not look at Nell until it was done. The broken china would be added to some invisible account against her, but that was nothing new. What was new came later, when Nell slipped into the mending room, carrying a bundle of dull napkins and a face full of resolve. "Miss Arden," she whispered, You asked once whether Sir Percival kept old letters. Beatrice looked up. I did not ask you that. No, miss, but your face did. Beatrice set down her needle. Nell, be careful. I'm trying to be. That's why I'm telling you before someone sends you away. The girl moved closer to the window, where the weak light caught the freckles across her nose. There are letters in the blue study. Not the front study where Sir Percival receives callers. The blue one at the back, the one that's kept locked unless he's doing accounts. I saw your name once. Beatrice's breath stopped. My name? Arden. It was on a packet tied with black ribbon. Mr. Edmund Arden, it said. There was another name too, a solicitor's name, I think. Harrow or Harcourt. I couldn't read all of it. Beatrice's hand closed around the needle until the metal pressed into her skin. When did you see this? 2 months ago. Lady Octavia sent me with candles, and the door was open. Sir Percival was angry because a letter had come. He said if Miss Arden ever learned what was settled, the whole arrangement would be questioned. The mending room seemed to tilt. Settled. Settlement. The word unlocked a memory she had not known she still possessed. Her father's study. Her mother holding a handkerchief to her mouth. A gentleman in black saying, "For the child's security, Mrs. Arden," a sealed packet. Her father's voice, weak but firm. Beatrice must not be dependent upon their charity. Then fever, grief, and Sir Percival's carriage carrying her away. Are you certain? She asked. Nell nodded. I'm certain enough to be frightened. That answer was worth more than certainty. Beatrice rose and crossed to the small cupboard where old ribbons were kept. Her fingers looked steady. That surprised her. Inside, she felt something moving that was not courage exactly, but the beginning of refusal. Is the blue study locked now? Nell glanced toward the door. Usually. But on Thursdays, Harris airs the back rooms before luncheon. Sometimes the key stays in the baize door if he's called away. Today is Thursday. Yes, miss. The house bell rang below. Voices shifted. Somewhere, Cressida laughed, bright and careless. Beatrice took the Duke's silk cord from her sleeve and looked at it once. She thought of Adrian Vale asking, not commanding. She thought of Sir Percival telling her curiosity was dangerous. Perhaps it was. Perhaps that was why men like him feared it. Nell, she said, if anyone asks, I have been here with Cressida's gown all morning. Nell swallowed. And if they find you? Beatrice folded the cord into her pocket, beside the small key to her sewing box. Then I shall have to become less easy to frighten. She waited until the corridor emptied, then stepped into the passage and moved toward the back stairs. Not quickly enough to look guilty, not slowly enough to lose her nerve. At the landing below, the door to the servants' corridor stood ajar. Beyond it, where the quieter rooms of Vane House gathered dust and secrets, a strip of blue wallpaper showed through the shadows. The study door was not closed. It rested open by the width of a hand. The blue study smelled of dust, ink, and secrets that had been left too long in closed drawers. Beatrice paused at the threshold with one hand against the doorframe, listening. Vane House breathed around her in its usual uneven way. Somewhere above, a chair scraped. From the kitchen passage came the muted clatter of pans. No footsteps approached. The door stood open by no more than 5 inches, but 5 inches were enough for a woman who had spent years learning how to move through rooms where she was not wanted. She slipped inside and drew the door almost closed behind her, leaving the same narrow gap. The room was smaller than Sir Percival's public study, and far less polished. Blue paper, faded by damp, curled near the window. A locked cabinet stood against one wall. A writing desk occupied the center, its surface arranged with unnatural care. There was a blotter, a brass letter opener, 3 stacked ledgers, and a shallow tray filled with correspondence tied in ribbon. Beatrice crossed to the desk without allowing herself to look at portraits or shelves. Curiosity could waste time. She needed proof, not atmosphere. Her fingers moved first to the tray. Household bills, a letter from a wine merchant, a note from a tailor marked overdue. Then, beneath them, a folded paper addressed to Sir Percival Vane in a neat legal hand. The name at the corner struck her breath from her. Harcourt and Bell, solicitors, Lincoln's Inn, Harcourt. Nell had remembered correctly. Beatrice opened the paper just enough to read the first lines. Sir, regarding the late Mr. Edmund Arden's settlement for his daughter, Miss Beatrice Arden, we must again request clarification as to the present disposition of funds held in trust. The words blurred, then sharpened with terrible force. Settlement funds held in trust. Her father had not left only debt and sentiment. He had left something that people in this house had buried under gratitude and old gowns. A sound came from the corridor. Beatrice froze. Not footsteps yet. A distant door closing. She folded the letter once, then looked frantically for somewhere to hide it. Her reticule was upstairs. Her pocket was too loose. Her sleeve held only the silk cord from Lady Augusta. Her glove. The split seam along her right glove, the same torn place Cressida had mocked, opened just enough near the wrist. Beatrice slid the folded letter beneath the lining, pressing it flat against her skin. The paper was stiff and cold. She had barely lowered her hand when the footsteps came. Slow, male. She moved to the window, seized one of the discarded linen cloths from a chair, and began wiping dust from the sill as the door opened. Harris, the butler, stared at her. His face did not change, but his gaze dropped to the cloth in her hand. Miss Arden. Beatrice turned with as much surprise as she could summon. Harris. I thought this room was being aired. It is, miss. Lady Octavia dislikes dust near the lower rooms. I saw the door open. It was a weak explanation. They both knew it. Harris glanced once toward the desk, then back to her. Behind his professional stillness, something measured her. Not suspicion alone, pity, perhaps, or warning. Lady Octavia has been asking for you. Then I must not keep her waiting. Beatrice moved toward the door, feeling the hidden letter scrape faintly against her wrist with each step. Harris did not block her. As she passed, he said in a voice scarcely above breath, Best not to linger here, miss. She looked at him. His gaze remained fixed on the opposite wall. No, she said softly. I suppose not. By evening the letter had been read 5 times and hidden twice. It gave only part of the truth, but that part was enough to crack the story. Beatrice had been forced to live inside. Her father's settlement existed. Questions had been asked. Sir Percival had not answered them. She copied the solicitor's name onto a scrap from an old pattern sheet, then stitched the original letter into the loose lining of her glove again, because no one in Vane House looked closely at what they believed already ruined. The next afternoon, a cream-colored note arrived from Alder-mere House. Lady Octavia read it in the drawing-room, and for once she could not tear it. Lady Augusta Vale, Dowager Duchess of Alder-mere, requested the pleasure of Miss Arden's company at a small musical evening, with Lady Octavia and Miss Vane included, of course, in the invitation. Proper, chaperoned, impossible to refuse without insulting a duchess. Cressida claimed a headache, then recovered when Lady Octavia said the Duke might be present. Sir Percival spent 10 minutes reading the note as though its margins might reveal a trap. Beatrice said nothing. Silence, she had learned, often drew out more truth than argument. Alder-mere House stood in a quieter part of Mayfair, its windows lit with steady golden light, rather than theatrical brilliance. The musical evening was select, not crowded. A harpist played in the long drawing-room. Elderly ladies occupied the best chairs. A few titled guests murmured over tea. Lady Augusta Vale sat near the hearth, silver-haired, erect, and composed with the unforced authority of a woman who had once ruled a ducal household and had never surrendered the habit. When Beatrice curtsied, the Dowager Duchess looked at her not as a curiosity, but as a person already expected. Miss Arden, she said, my son was correct. You have a steady presence. Lady Octavia's smile tightened. Cressida looked offended by the compliment's restraint, perhaps because restraint made it sound true. Your Grace is kind, Beatrice said. Not especially, Lady Augusta, replied, but I endeavor to be fair. That somehow comforted Beatrice more than sweetness would have done. Adrian appeared after the first song, not with a grand entrance, but with the quiet inevitability of a man everyone noticed, while pretending not to. He greeted his mother, then Lady Octavia and Cressida, then Beatrice. Miss Arden, Your Grace. The room allowed them no privacy, but society had many shades of public. After the second piece, Lady Augusta asked Lady Octavia to advise her on a charity subscription table near the far wall. Cressida was drawn into conversation by a baron's widowed sister, who asked detailed questions about embroidery and would not be escaped. Beatrice found herself beside a small table holding sheet music, with Adrian standing several feet away, close enough for speech and far enough for propriety. "You came," he said. "Your mother invited me. That is not the same thing." "No," she admitted, "it is not." His gaze dropped to her right glove. It was the old one, carefully mended but not replaced. "You kept the card safe?" "Yes. May I see it?" She hesitated only a moment. Then she drew the ivory dance card from the small pocket hidden in her skirt and laid it on the table between them. Adrian did not touch it at first. He bent his head, studying the surface beneath the lamplight. "Here," he said. "Do you see it?" Beatrice leaned closer. Not too close. Close enough that the faint scent of clean linen and sandalwood reached her. He indicated the place beneath his name. "Those are initials, not a full name." The line was erased hastily, but the pressure remained. Beatrice saw them then, a pale A perhaps, and the beginning of another letter. Whoever wrote first changed their mind, or was instructed to make the insult sharper. She swallowed. "Cheaper because of you. Because refusal from me would be more memorable than refusal from a harmless young man." His voice remained even, but something cold moved under it. "Miss Arden, someone intended an audience." Beatrice looked across the room. Lady Octavia was watching while pretending to admire a porcelain vase. Cressida's attention kept slipping toward them between embroidery questions. "There is more," Beatrice said. The words frightened her. Once spoken, they could not be folded back into a glove. Adrian's expression altered, not with triumph, but with caution. "You do not have to tell me here. If I wait until I am brave, I may wait too long." He said nothing. That steadiness gave her room. Beatrice slid 2 fingers beneath the loose seam of her glove and drew out the folded solicitor's letter. Adrian saw where it had been hidden. His eyes darkened, but he did not reach for it. "May I?" he asked. She held the letter between them. "Before I give this to you, I need your word. You have it if it is mine to give. You must not use my pain as evidence without my consent. You must not speak of my father as a weapon. You must not decide what is best for me, because you are powerful enough to do so." The music ended. Applause covered the silence that followed. Adrian looked at her for a long moment, and Beatrice braced herself for offense. Men of rank did not enjoy conditions from women without fortune. But he only bowed his head, slightly and gravely. "I give you my word." Her fingers loosened. He took the letter as if it weighed more than paper. While he read, Beatrice watched his face instead of the room. His expression did not flare into outrage. It became stiller, which she was beginning to understand was more dangerous. "Harcourt and Bell," he said quietly. "My family has used them before." Hope rose so quickly she had to restrain it. "Then they are real, very real, and the settlement, also real, if this letter is accurate." Beatrice pressed her torn glove against the table edge. "He told me my father left nothing." Adrian folded the letter with care. "Then either your guardian was mistaken, or he lied. Sir Percival is rarely mistaken when money is involved." The sentence surprised them both. Adrian's mouth softened, not into amusement this time, but recognition. "No," he said, "I suspect he is not." Lady Octavia began moving back toward them. Beatrice saw the moment her aunt noticed the paper in Adrian's hand. Alarm crossed her face before she could school it. Adrian saw that too. He returned the letter to Beatrice immediately. "Keep it hidden," he said. "Do not bring it out again unless you choose to. You don't want to take it. I want many things, Miss Arden. That does not give me the right to take yours." The words went through her more deeply than any compliment. She slipped the letter back into the glove as Lady Octavia arrived, smiling too widely. "Your Grace, Beatrice, I trust the music has not been neglected for conversation." "Not at all," Adrian said. "Miss Arden has been explaining the value of preserving old things." Beatrice held the ivory card in her hand, the fresh silk cord folded beneath it. Across the room, Cressida finally escaped the embroidery discussion and looked toward them with narrowed eyes. Adrian's gaze followed hers for the briefest moment. "Interesting," he murmured. Beatrice looked up. "What is? Your cousin is afraid of what you might become when you are believed." Lady Octavia heard only the shape of the remark, not its meaning. Beatrice heard both, and for the first time, fear was not the only thing that answered inside her, so did resolve. By the third morning after Lady Augusta's musical evening, the lie had learned to walk on its own. It entered Vane House before breakfast in the form of 2 calling cards left without callers, 3. Notes Lady Octavia read and burned, and 1 folded gossip sheet Cressida pretended not to have purchased while reading every word twice. Beatrice knew something had changed before anyone spoke to her. Servants lowered their eyes too quickly. Lady Octavia watched her with the cold patience of a woman waiting for a stain to spread. Sir Percival did not mention the blue study, the solicitor, or the Duke of Alder-mere, which frightened Beatrice more than anger would have done. Silence in him was never empty. It was preparation. She kept the solicitor's letter hidden in the lining of her glove, and the ivory dance card behind the loose panel beneath her washstand. Each morning she checked both before descending. Each morning she told herself that proof mattered. Yet proof did little against whispers, and London loved whispers more than truth. The first clear blow came that evening at Lady Burnham's dinner, a gathering Lady Octavia insisted they attend, because absence, she said, would appear guilty. Beatrice wore the grey gown again, altered with a strip of old lace at the throat. Cressida wore cream silk with the pearl clasp, glowing beside her mother like innocence polished for display. Sir Percival presented them all, with the careful warmth of a guardian, devoted to 2 young ladies under his protection. No one outside the family would have guessed that Beatrice had been warned in the carriage. That if she spoke privately to the Duke, she would find herself sent to Bath before the week was done. Lady Burnham's dining room shone with candles and gilt mirrors, but the brightness did not welcome Beatrice. It exposed her. Conversation thinned when she entered. A young woman near the mantel leaned toward her mother and whispered behind a fan. An elderly gentleman looked at Beatrice, then at the Duke, who stood across the room speaking with Lady Augusta. He had come. Beatrice had not been told he would. The sight of him struck her with relief so sudden that she despised herself for needing it. Adrian Vale looked as composed as ever, but his attention found her almost immediately. He did not bow across the room. That would have fed the gossip. He only held her gaze for the length of 1 measured breath, enough to ask whether she was steady, and enough for her to answer by lifting her chin. Then Lady Octavia touched Beatrice's elbow with 2 fingers. "Do not stare, my dear. It encourages interpretations." Cressida's smile was soft and poisonous. "Though perhaps interpretations are what Beatrice wants. I want supper to pass without embarrassment," Beatrice said. "Then you've chosen the wrong season for miracles," Cressida murmured. Dinner placed Beatrice near the lower end of the table, beside a minor clergyman's widow and a cross from a gentleman who seemed terrified that conversation with her might be contagious. That suited her until Lady Burnham, with the bright cruelty of a hostess pretending innocence, said down the table, "Miss Arden, we were all so touched by your courage at Lady Hardwicke's ball. It is no small thing to approach a gentleman of such consequence with so little introduction." The words landed in the exact space where forks paused and glasses stilled. Beatrice felt the table listening. Lady Octavia gave a faint sigh. "My niece is inexperienced. We have tried to guide her." "Indeed," Lady Burnham said. "One hears such romantic accounts." Cressida lowered her eyes. "I wish people would not exaggerate. Beatrice has always had a tender imagination." Beatrice looked at her cousin. Cressida's lashes trembled with practiced sorrow. "Tender?" Beatrice asked. Cressida hesitated, then seemed to gather courage for the room's benefit. "I don't want to speak unkindly." "Then don't," Beatrice said. A few heads turned. The clergyman's widow hid a smile in her napkin. Lady Octavia's expression sharpened. Sir Percival set down his glass with deliberate calm. From farther up the table, Adrian's gaze moved from Cressida to Beatrice, and Beatrice felt the steadiness of it like a hand at her back. Lady Burnham leaned forward. "But surely, Miss Vane, if there has been a misunderstanding, honesty is kinder." Cressida produced a folded paper from beneath her reticule. Beatrice's blood went cold before the seal was even broken. The room altered around that paper. People did not know what it contained, yet they recognized theatre when it appeared. Lady Octavia made a show of reaching for her daughter's hand. "Cressida, no, we must not humiliate her." The performance was so complete that Beatrice almost admired it. Almost. "I found it among Beatrice's things," Cressida whispered. "I tried to hide it, but after the Duke called at our house, I feared she might be led into greater folly." Sir Percival closed his eyes briefly, as if burdened by family pain. "My dear girl," he said, "you should have come to me first." "I was ashamed," Cressida said. "For her." The paper passed to Lady Burnham, then to the woman beside her, then toward the upper end of the table, each hand carrying it as though it were too delicate to hold, and too delicious to surrender. Beatrice did not ask to see it. She did not need to. The lie had arrived in handwriting. Lady Burnham read aloud, not loudly but clearly enough. "Your Grace, if you would only understand how little remains to me, and how much I have hoped since our dance, I would be the most grateful creature in England. I have no fortune, but I would devote myself to any arrangement that secured your protection." A murmur moved through the table. The words were almost plausible, which made them more grotesque. They sounded like what cruel people imagined poverty would say if it forgot its dignity. Beatrice felt heat rise to her face, then drain away. She looked at the paper as it came closer. The handwriting resembled hers at first glance. The slope was similar, the letters narrowed in the same places. But it was too careful, too decorative, and there was a phrase she would never use. "Most grateful creature." Cressida had once used the phrase mockingly, after Lady Octavia praised a spaniel for obedience. Beatrice remembered because Cressida had turned to her afterward and said, "You see, gratitude is charming in the properly bred." Adrian's voice cut through the murmurs. "May I see the letter?" No one refused him. The paper reached his hand within seconds. He read it once. His face did not change. Then he looked at Beatrice, and the room leaned toward the moment like a crowd toward a window. He did not ask if she had written it. He did not look wounded. He did not look disgusted. "Miss Arden," he said, "who has access to your paper?" The question struck the table harder than accusation would have. Lady Octavia's lips parted. Sir Percival's gaze flashed toward Cressida. Cressida went still. Beatrice drew one quiet breath. "Anyone in Vane House who enters the mending room, my small chamber, or the desk where Lady Octavia has me copy invitations." "Your Grace, lady." Octavia said quickly, "Surely you cannot mean to suggest this sad little letter is anything but the natural result of a young woman's confusion." "I have suggested nothing," Adrian replied. Yet, Lady Burnham looked thrilled and alarmed in equal measure. Sir Percival leaned forward. "Alder-mere, with respect, this is a private family embarrassment. Miss Arden is dependent upon our generosity. Her hopes may have overrun her judgment. It is unfortunate, but not malicious." Beatrice had spent years letting that tone define the borders of her life. Dependent, generosity, unfortunate. She could feel the old obedience pressing on her tongue, urging her to lower her eyes, accept a lesser shame, and survive the evening. Then she looked at Cressida, whose face held the faint beginning of victory. She looked at Lady Octavia, who had already prepared forgiveness like a collar. She looked at Sir Percival, who wanted her discredited before anyone could ask why her father's settlement had vanished into his household. Beatrice laid her hands in her lap beneath the table where no one could see them tremble. "I did not write that letter," she said. Lady Octavia sighed. "Beatrice." "No." The word was quiet, but it cut cleanly. Beatrice turned to Lady Burnham, then to the length of the table. "I will not confess to a hunger I have never had." Silence followed. It was not the stunned silence of a ballroom, watching a duke choose an unexpected partner. It was sharper. People had come expecting to see a poor relation dissolve beneath shame. Instead, she had refused the name being handed to her. Cressida recovered first. "Beatrice, don't make it worse." "For whom?" Beatrice asked. Cressida flushed. Lady Octavia reached for her glass and missed the stem by a fraction. Adrian folded the letter with exact care. "This paper is not Miss Arden's usual stationery." Sir Percival's voice hardened. "You know her stationery. I know what was placed before me." Adrian held up the page. "This is finer. Vane House paper, I believe." The watermark is visible near the lower fold. Lady Burnham gave a soft gasp and immediately pretended it had been a cough. Cressida's fingers dug into her napkin. Lady Octavia smiled too late. "Beatrice often uses whatever is available in the house." "Then the house is relevant," Adrian said. "So are the persons within it." The table had become very still. Beatrice could hear the faint crackle of candle wicks. She could hear her own pulse. Sir Percival's voice lowered. "Your Grace, I must insist that my niece be spared further distress." "I agree," Adrian said. He rose. Every man at the table followed by instinct, chairs shifting against the floor. "Miss Arden has been questioned enough for one evening." Lady Octavia stood as well. "She will return home with us." "Naturally," Adrian said. "But not as a culprit escorted from judgment." He looked to Lady Augusta, who had watched the entire scene with cold, bright attention. The Dowager Duchess set down her wineglass. "Miss Arden will walk with me to the withdrawing room." It was not a request. Beatrice rose because the alternative was to remain seated beneath the weight of the lie. Cressida looked as though she might protest, but Lady Augusta's rank closed the room around her. As Beatrice passed Adrian, he did not touch her. He only lowered his voice. "Keep your glove safe." She looked up, startled. He had guessed where the solicitor's letter was hidden. Or perhaps he had simply learned that everything damaged near Beatrice mattered. "I shall," she whispered. In the withdrawing room, Lady Augusta asked for tea and dismissed sympathy with one glance. "Do not weep unless it would help," she said. Beatrice gave a breath that was almost a laugh. "It wouldn't. Good. Tears are often wasted on the undeserving." The door opened moments later. Adrian entered with permission from his mother, the forged letter in his hand and something dark in his expression. "The letter will spread by morning," he said. It was meant to. Beatrice looked toward the closed door, beyond which Cressida, Lady Octavia, and Sir Percival were surely arranging the next version of events. Then they have done what they intended. Not entirely. Adrian placed the forged letter on the table, beside Lady Augusta's untouched tea. "They intended me to doubt you." Beatrice met his eyes. "Do you know?" The answer came without hesitation, and for one dangerous moment, relief felt almost like pain. Then Adrian added, "But proving it will require care. Whoever wrote this knew enough to imitate you, but not enough to understand you." Beatrice looked at the folded page. Her humiliation had become evidence, and evidence had become war. "What happens now?" she asked. Adrian's gaze did not leave hers. "Now we discover who in Vane House was foolish enough to believe ink could make a lie honorable." The forged letter traveled through London faster than any carriage could have carried truth. By noon the next day, Beatrice could feel it pressing against the windows of Vane House, invisible yet everywhere. A note arrived from one of Lady Octavia's acquaintances, and was answered with 10 careful lines of injured dignity. A footman brought word that Lady Burnham had called upon Lady Hardwicke, who had then called upon Lady Westbury, whose daughter was known to repeat nothing, unless it could ruin someone prettily. Cressida spent the morning in the drawing-room, arranging flowers with unnecessary force, while Lady Octavia corrected every stem as if society itself might be restored by symmetry. Sir Percival said little. That was the worst of it. His silence had the clean surface of ice over dark water. Beatrice remained in the small back parlour, mending cuffs no one needed, and feeling the solicitor's letter hidden inside her glove each time she moved her wrist. The paper had become more than evidence. It was proof that her memory had not betrayed her, proof that the story of her dependence had been built over something buried. Still, proof could not protect her from gossip. A woman with no fortune could be accused faster than she could defend herself, and every defense sounded, to hungry ears, like desperation. When Harris entered shortly after luncheon, Beatrice knew before he spoke that the day had shifted again. "His Grace, the Duke of Alder-mere, has called, miss," the butler said, keeping his voice low. Lady Octavia rose so quickly that a rose stem snapped between her fingers. "Again?" Cressida's eyes brightened, not with pleasure now, but with resentment sharpened by fear. Sir Percival stepped from the doorway, where he had been standing unnoticed. "Show him into the drawing-room," he said. "Miss Arden will join us when summoned." Harris bowed, but Adrian Vale's voice came from the hall before he could withdraw. "Miss Arden will join us now if she is willing." The silence that followed was complete. The Duke entered a moment later, dressed in dark mourning clothes, his face composed and his eyes colder than Beatrice had yet seen them. He bowed with perfect correctness to Lady Octavia, Cressida, and Sir Percival. Then he looked to Beatrice, not at her glove, not at the room, at her. "Miss Arden, Your Grace," Lady Octavia recovered first, "we are surprised by the honor. After last night's unfortunate distress, we had hoped to keep Beatrice quiet." "Quiet is not always safe," Adrian said. Sir Percival gave a short laugh. "A philosophical remark, Your Grace. A practical one." Adrian placed his hat and gloves on the table without sitting. "I have come with a proposal intended to prevent further public injury." Beatrice's heart tightened at the word proposal, then rebuked itself. Men like Adrian Vale did not make romantic declarations in rooms supervised by hostile guardians. This was strategy. It had to be. Lady Octavia gestured toward a chair. "How considerate." "My mother is prepared to receive Miss Arden at Windholm Hall for several days," Adrian said. "The invitation would be issued properly. Lady Augusta will act as chaperone. Miss Arden's reputation would be placed under my family's protection until this slander is answered." Cressida made a sound between a laugh and a gasp. Lady Octavia went still. Sir Percival's gaze sharpened, but Beatrice barely saw any of them. Windholm Hall, a ducal estate, distance, shelter, safety perhaps. And yet the word settled over her, like a door closing from the outside. Adrian was watching her with the intensity of a man offering rescue and expecting reason to recognize it. Part of her did. She knew what it would mean to leave Vane House even for a week, to sleep beyond Lady Octavia's reach, to keep the solicitor's letter where Sir Percival could not demand it. But another part of her, older than last night's scandal and deeper than gratitude, recoiled. Sent away, hidden, managed, protected because she was too inconvenient to remain visible. Sir Percival spoke before she could. Out of the question. Adrian did not turn. "I did not ask you. I am her guardian. She is not a child." The sentence struck the room like a bell. Beatrice felt it echo in her chest, the same question she had asked Sir Percival only yesterday. "Am I a child, sir?" Lady Octavia smiled tightly. "Beatrice is in no condition to decide anything. She has been overwrought." Beatrice looked at Adrian. "Is that what you believe?" Something flickered in his expression. "No." "Then why does everyone keep speaking as though I am not here?" Cressida seized the opening. "Because you've made yourself impossible to help. First, you encouraged the Duke's attention, then denied it, and now when he offers charity you look offended." "This is not charity," Adrian said. "Isn't it?" Beatrice asked. The question surprised him. She saw that it did. For the first time since he had entered, he looked less certain. "It is protection." "Protection from what?" "From a household that has allowed your name to be abused, from a forged letter circulating through drawing rooms, from whatever Sir Percival is attempting to bury beneath his outrage." Sir Percival took a step forward. "Your Grace, that is an intolerable implication." "Then tolerate it quietly." Cressida flushed. Lady Octavia's fan snapped open. Beatrice should have felt triumphant at Sir Percival's silence. Instead, she felt the room narrowing around her choice. Adrian had named the danger correctly. That did not make his solution right. "And while I am at Windholm Hall," she said, "what happens here? I make inquiries. You? Yes. And I wait, you remain safe. Safe, she repeated. The word tasted familiar, because it had been used in many disguises. Lady Octavia had kept her safe from society by leaving her at the edge of rooms. Sir Percival had kept her safe from worry by denying her knowledge of her father's affairs. Cressida had kept her safe from vanity by reminding her she had nothing to offer. Now Adrian, with better intentions and far more power, was asking her to step aside while men decided the shape of her life. His face changed as he understood that the word had harmed rather than soothed. Miss Arden, he said more quietly, I do not mean to command you, but you thought of the plan before asking me. There was urgency. There has always been urgency when someone wishes to decide quickly on my behalf. Lady Octavia's eyes glittered with satisfaction. She could feel the divide opening. Beatrice, do not be ungrateful. His Grace is trying to spare you further humiliation. No, Beatrice said, still looking at Adrian. He is trying to hide it from happening in public. Adrian went very still. The old fear in her urged her to soften the words. Another part of her would not. If she could not tell the truth to the one man who had noticed the lie, then his notice had done nothing. Your Grace, you saw me because they sent me across a ballroom to be refused. If I had been tucked safely into a carriage before anyone could look, you would have seen nothing. If I go now, they will say, I fled because the letter was true. They will say your mother took pity on me. They will say I was removed to prevent worse disgrace. I can answer that, with rank, if necessary, and then I become another matter settled by the Duke of Alder-mere. Adrian's jaw tightened. The words had landed. She regretted the pain in his face, but not enough to recall them. I had thought, he said slowly, that you wanted help. I do. Her voice softened despite herself. But help is not the same as being carried out of view. For a moment, no one spoke. The distance between them was only several feet, yet it felt wider than the ballroom floor had ever been. Lady Octavia lowered her fan just enough to reveal a perfect expression of concern. Perhaps your Grace can see how excitable Beatrice becomes when pressed, Cressida added. She refused our guidance too. She doesn't want protection unless it comes with a title. Beatrice turned toward her. Do not put your hunger in my mouth. Cressida's face went white, then red. Sir Percival stepped between them, with the authority of a man reclaiming his stage. This interview is over. My niece will remain under my roof. We are obliged for your concern, your Grace, but we cannot allow every unpleasant rumor to be magnified by ducal interference. Adrian's eyes remained on Beatrice. Is that your answer? She knew he was asking more than whether she would go. He was asking whether she trusted him. The cruelest truth was that she did, more than was safe, and that was why she could not let him become another person who decided for her. I will not go to Windholm Hall to be hidden, she said. Not now. A shadow crossed his face. He bowed, formal and wounded. Then I have overstepped. Yes, the word hurt. It needed to be said. Adrian accepted it without defense. That too hurt. He retrieved his gloves. At the door, he turned back once. Not to Sir Percival or Lady Octavia, but to Beatrice. If you require assistance, send word through my mother. I will not act without your consent again. Then he leapt. The door closed, and all the air seemed to leave with him. For one suspended instant, Beatrice stood in the wreckage of the first honest quarrel she had ever had, with a man powerful enough to punish her for it, and honorable enough not to. Then Cressida laughed. How noble! You rejected a duke's charity because it wasn't a proposal. Lady Octavia placed a hand over her heart. The story will explain itself, I fear. Sir Percival looked at Beatrice with grim satisfaction. Indeed it will. By tomorrow, London will know that Miss Arden refused the Dowager Duchess's protection, because she believed herself entitled to more. Beatrice's stomach tightened. That is not true. Truth, Cressida said. How inconvenient you've become about truth. Sir Percival rang the bell. Harris will send a note to my sister in Bath. She requires a companion for the summer. Quiet surroundings will benefit you. Beatrice felt the trap spring beneath her feet. You are sending me away. You refused Windholm Hall, Lady Octavia said sweetly. Surely you cannot object to Bath. When? Sir Percival answered at once. As soon as arrangements can be made. Beatrice lowered her eyes so they would not see the decision forming there. They thought Adrian's departure had left her alone. They thought Bath would remove her before the solicitor's letter could matter. They were wrong. She still had the glove. She still had Nell. She still knew where the blue study stood, and now she knew Sir Percival was frightened enough to move her. That meant the truth was close. Very well, she said. Cressida frowned, disappointed by the lack of tears. Lady Octavia looked suspicious. Sir Percival seemed almost relieved. Beatrice curtsied and withdrew, walking slowly enough to appear defeated. Only when she reached the back stairs did she press her hidden letter against her wrist and let herself breathe. She would not run to the Duke. Not this time. She would not be carried, hidden or arranged. If she was to leave Vane House, she would leave with proof in her own hand. That night, after the household settled and the lamps burned low, Beatrice took a candle from the mending room, wrapped the holder in a cloth to dim the light, and turned toward the blue study. The door was locked now, of course it was. But Nell had told her once that Harris kept duplicate keys behind the loose stone near the scullery stair, because old houses respected inconvenience more than secrecy. Beatrice found the key by touch. Her fingers shook, but not from fear alone. The lock gave with a soft click. Inside the blue study, the ledgers waited on the desk where Sir Percival had left them, stacked neatly beside a black ribbon packet, marked with her father's name. Beatrice stepped in and closed the door behind her. The first ledger opened beneath Beatrice's hand, as though it had been waiting years to accuse someone. She held the candle low, keeping the flame cupped behind her palm so that no light would leak beneath the blue study door. The room was cold, but her skin felt hot with urgency. On the desk, the packet tied with black ribbon bore her father's name in a legal hand that trembled slightly where ink had faded with age. Mr. Edmund Arden. Settlement for Miss Beatrice Arden. She did not untie it first. The ledgers were newer, and Sir Percival feared recent things more than memories. She turned pages by their corners, scanning dates, names, amounts, and tidy notations that tried to make theft look like household order. At first, the entries meant little. Payments to milliners, payments to jewelers, sums moved from one account to another. Then she saw her own name reduced to initials, B.A. Trust income transferred for family maintenance, B.A. Portion advanced against future settlement. B.A. funds applied to Miss Vane's presentation expenses. The candle wavered. Beatrice set it down before her hand could shake wax across the page. Presentations expenses, Cressida's gowns, Cressida's pearl clasp, the carriage repairs, the unpaid tailor, the parties that Lady Octavia called necessary for family standing. Her father had not left her dependent upon their generosity. He had left her something they had spent, while teaching her to be grateful for scraps. For a moment, anger came so cleanly that it frightened her less than grief. It steadied her. Beatrice took the small pencil she had hidden in her pocket and began copying dates onto folded scraps, torn from an old household list. She did not copy everything. Too much would take too long and look too desperate. She chose entries that repeated. Her initials, the same account number, the same signatures. Sir Percival's hand, sharp and slanted, approving each withdrawal. Somewhere beyond the door, the house creaked. Beatrice stopped. Silence returned. She forced herself to breathe, then untied the black ribbon packet. Inside lay older letters from Harcourt and Bell, one sealed copy of her father's instructions, and a short note in her mother's hand. For Beatrice, when she is old enough to ask why kindness must never be confused with control. The words blurred. She pressed the heel of her hand beneath one eye and refused the tears. Not here. Not in Sir Percival's room. She folded the note and slipped it inside her bodice, close enough that no hurried search of her pocket would find it. The ledger entries went into the lining of her glove with the first solicitor's letter. By the time she heard a whisper at the door, the packet was tied again, and the ledger lay open as she had found it. Miss Arden? Nell's voice breathed through the gap. "You must come." "Harris is awake." Beatrice opened the door just enough to see the maid's pale face in the corridor. "Did anyone see you?" "No, miss, but there's a lamp below." "Hurry." Beatrice locked the study with the duplicate key and returned it behind the loose stone near the scullery stair. She reached her room before dawn, still wearing the same grey gown, and sat on the edge of the bed until the first servant stirred. She had proof, not all of it, enough. That should have made her feel safer. Instead, the house seemed to know. At breakfast, Sir Percival watched her too closely. Lady Octavia announced that the bath arrangements would be concluded within 2 days. Cressida smiled into her tea and asked whether Beatrice preferred to travel with 1 trunk or 2, since expectations ought not exceed employment. Beatrice answered nothing. Silence had become useful again, not as surrender, but as cover. By mid-morning, Lady Octavia had a room full of callers, all eager to offer sympathy without naming the scandal directly. The drawing-room filled with perfume, gloves, and quiet malice. Beatrice was sent to fetch a shawl from upstairs, because Lady Octavia wanted her visible enough to be pitied, and obedient enough to be dismissed. On the landing, Nell appeared from the linen closet and pressed a folded paper into her hand. "I copied the dates you marked, miss. I can't read all the names, but I copied the shapes." Beatrice stared at her. "Nell, you shouldn't have risked this. You risked more for a tray. That was china. This is you." There was no time to answer. Voices moved below. Beatrice tucked Nell's copy with her own papers inside the torn glove and turned toward the stairs. She had taken 3 steps when Cressida came out of the upper drawing-room. Her cream morning dress was trimmed with blue ribbon, and the pearl clasp shone at her throat, like evidence too proud to hide. Her gaze dropped at once to Beatrice's glove. "How attached you are to that dreadful thing." Beatrice kept moving. "Good gloves are expensive. So is presumption." Cressida stepped in front of her. "Mamma says you are to come down. Then let me pass. What did the maid give you?" Beatrice's heart struck once hard. "A handkerchief. Show me no." Cressida's eyes widened with delight. Still giving orders after refusing a duke? How quickly grandeur fades. She reached for Beatrice's wrist. Beatrice drew back, but Cressida's fingers caught the weak seam of the glove. The old kid leather tore open with a soft, ruinous sound. Folded scraps slipped to the carpet between them. For 1 second, neither woman moved. Then Cressida dropped to seize them. Beatrice was faster with one hand, but not fast enough. Cressida snatched a copied page and read the first line. Her face changed. "What is this?" Beatrice held out her hand. "Mine. Nothing's yours here." The words came too quickly, too naturally. Then Cressida seemed to hear herself. Color rose in her cheeks. From below, Lady Octavia's voice called, "Cressida!" Panic flickered through Cressida's eyes. She crushed the page in her fist. "You stole from my uncle's study. I found what belonged to me. You found trouble." Cressida turned toward the stairs. Beatrice knew then that there was no later, no careful plan, no waiting for the perfect witness. If Cressida reached Sir Percival first, the proof would vanish and Beatrice would be in a carriage to Bath by nightfall. She gathered the remaining pages, closed her torn glove around them, and descended the back staircase while Cressida went down the front. The morning call crowd saved her. Coats, hats, and footmen filled the hall. Lady Octavia's guests were leaving in a flutter of phrases, each one reluctant to miss whatever disturbance had begun upstairs. Beatrice moved among them with a lowered head, carrying a folded shawl as camouflage. Harris saw her near the door. His eyes went to her torn glove, then to the stair where Cressida's voice had begun rising. He opened the front door for a departing baroness, and held it one breath longer than necessary. Beatrice stepped through. She did not run. Running would turn heads. She walked down the steps, crossed the pavement, and moved into the flow of carriages and morning traffic as though she had been sent on an errand. Only at the corner did she look back. Cressida stood in the open doorway, white-faced with fury. Beatrice turned away before fear could call her home. Alder-mere House was not far. but every street seemed to lengthen beneath her feet. She had no companion, no proper escort, no certainty that the door would open to her rather than scandal. Still, she did not go to Adrian. She asked for Lady Augusta Vale. That choice mattered. It was the first one she had made entirely for herself. The footman at Alder-mere House looked startled by her torn glove and breathless composure, but her name changed everything. Within minutes she was shown into a morning room, where Lady Augusta sat with correspondence spread before her. The Dowager Duchess rose at once. "Miss Arden." Beatrice curtsied, then held out the damaged glove with the papers inside. "Your Grace, I need a witness before I need a rescuer." Lady Augusta's face sharpened, not with shock, but with approval. "Then sit down, child, before dignity knocks you flat." Beatrice sat because her knees finally allowed truth to reach them. Lady Augusta read the copied entries without interruption. When she finished, she pulled the bell. "Send to my son, at once." Adrian arrived less than half an hour later. He entered quickly, then stopped, when he saw Beatrice seated beside his mother, not collapsed, not hidden, but pale and upright, with the torn glove on the table between them. His gaze moved over the papers, then to her face. Something in his expression changed, and the memory of their last conversation stood between them. "Miss Arden," he said. "I came as soon as I received word." Beatrice rose. "I did not send for you first, I know." His voice was quiet. Lady Augusta looked from one to the other and said nothing. Adrian took a step closer, then stopped, as if reminding himself that permission mattered. "You were right," he said. Beatrice's throat tightened. "About Windholm Hall, about me. I mistook silence for safety. I mistook removal for protection. I should have asked what standing beside you required, before I decided where you ought to stand." The apology was not grand. It did not need to be. It entered the room without asking for admiration. Beatrice looked at the torn glove, the copied entries, the evidence of theft, and the cost of being believed. "I was frightened," she said. "So was I," Adrian replied. "I handled mine poorly." Lady Augusta folded the papers with decisive care. "Then you may both improve. The Vanes will not sit idle now." As if summoned by the words, the footman returned with a silver tray. On it lay a note addressed to Beatrice in Sir Percival's hand. She opened it while Adrian and Lady Augusta watched. The message contained only one sentence. "If you appear at Her Grace's gathering with stolen papers, I shall tell London the truth about your mother." Beatrice read it once, then again. The room seemed to darken at the edges. Adrian's voice came low beside her. "Miss Arden?" Beatrice lowered the note. "He has found another weapon." Lady Augusta's eyes flashed. "Then we shall learn whether it is steel or smoke." Sir Percival's note lay on Lady Augusta's writing table, like a stain that refused to dry. Beatrice had read it 3 times, and each reading made the words more poisonous. "The truth about your mother. There were many forms of cruelty, but the cleverest kind did not invent a wound. It pressed on one already hidden." Beatrice remembered her mother in fragments softened by childhood and grief. Marianne Arden had smelled faintly of lavender water. She had hummed when she mended lace. She had kept the ivory dance. Card wrapped in tissue at the back of a small cedar box, and once, when Beatrice had asked whether it came from a ball, she had smiled in a way that seemed both happy and sad. "It came from the last night I was allowed to feel young," she had said. Beatrice had not understood then. After her mother's death, Sir Percival had trained her not to ask. Lady Augusta read the note once, and placed it flat upon the table. "There is a difference between a weapon and a truth," she said. "Men who possess the latter do not usually announce it so theatrically." Adrian stood near the hearth, motionless except for the hand that closed slowly around the back of a chair. "Sir Percival is attempting to frighten you away from the evidence." "Perhaps," Beatrice said. Her voice sounded calm, because fear had gone beyond trembling. "But he would not choose my mother unless he knew it would work." Adrian's gaze softened, but he did not come closer. Since his apology, he had been careful with distance, careful with words, careful not to turn concern into command. That restraint reached her more deeply than any dramatic reassurance could have done. "What did he tell you about her?" he asked. Beatrice looked down at her torn glove on the table. The glove had carried letters, copied entries, and now perhaps the edge of a dead woman's reputation. Very little. Only that she was sentimental, impractical, and easily led. Lady Octavia once said my mother had made herself pitiable by confusing affection with security. Cressida said she had left me nothing but soft eyes and poor judgment. Lady Augusta's face changed. Not shock, recognition. Marianne Arden had neither poor judgment nor soft weakness. Beatrice looked up sharply. "You knew her? Not well, but well enough to resent that description." Lady Augusta moved to the small escritoire near the window and unlocked a lower drawer. "Your mother came to my house once, years before my husband died. It was not a grand affair, a subscription evening for widows of naval officers. She wore pale green, if memory serves, and refused. 3 invitations to sit with women of higher rank, because she had promised to help an elderly companion who could not hear the music from the back of the room." The image entered Beatrice so vividly that she had to grip the table, not scandal, kindness, not weakness, choice. Sir Percival said she was careless with money. Sir Percival would call any woman careless if she refused to let him hold the purse. Lady Augusta withdrew a small notebook bound in dark leather. "I kept lists in those days, names, donations, useful impressions. A duchess survives society by remembering who lies gracefully and who tells truth badly." She turned the pages with deliberate care. "Here, Marianne Arden. Quiet manner, excellent sense. Refused Sir Percival Vane's suggestion that her late husband's settlement be placed under his sole direction. Spoke of securing her daughter's future." Beatrice could not speak, Adrian did, but only after a pause. "Your Grace, may Miss Arden see it?" Lady Augusta turned the notebook toward Beatrice. The handwriting was small and firm. Marianne Arden, excellent sense, securing her daughter's future. The words were not much, they were everything. Beatrice touched the edge of the page, not the ink. "Then why did he say there was shame?" "Because shame is cheaper than repayment," Lady Augusta said. "And because a child can be taught to doubt her mother, she is not old enough to defend." Adrian's hand on the chair tightened once, then released. His control did not hide his anger. It refined it. "There may still be something he means to twist," he said. "A visit or refusal, some old rumor." Lady Augusta nodded. "Of course. Respectable monsters prefer smoke with their mirrors." She turned another page. There was gossip after Marianne withdrew from society. Not because she had done wrong, but because people enjoy inventing reasons when a pretty woman disappears from rooms where they expected to admire her. I later heard she had been ill. Beatrice drew a breath that hurt. She was. I remember curtains closed in the afternoon. I remember a doctor who smelled of tobacco and peppermint. I remember my father saying she must not be troubled. "There," Lady Augusta said gently, which somehow made the word stronger. "Illness is not disgrace. Refusing a greedy relation is not disgrace. Protecting a child is not disgrace." Beatrice looked at the ivory dance card, which she had placed beside the evidence after arriving at Alder-mere House. The old painted flowers seemed different now, not a relic of foolish sentiment, but a witness from a night before fear had been forced over memory. "She kept this," Beatrice said. "I thought perhaps it was from some evening she regretted. Perhaps she kept it because it reminded her that she had once been more than her illness, more than a widow, more than a sum of money men wished to manage." Adrian's voice was low. "May I?" Beatrice understood he meant the card. She nodded. He lifted it with the same care he had shown the first night, when the whole ballroom had watched for her rejection. The new silk cord Lady Augusta had sent lay beside the old frayed one, not yet attached. Adrian studied the faint names, the faded border, and the darker ink of his own name written over erasure. "This card has been used twice against women who deserved better," he said. "First by being turned into an emblem of false shame, then by being turned into a jest against you. And yet," Lady Augusta said, "it survived both." Beatrice gave a small breath, almost laughter, almost grief. "So did we, apparently." Adrian looked at her then. and something passed between them. Not the easy sweetness of courtship, but the harder tenderness of two people standing beside a truth that had cost something. He set the card down and stepped back. He did not touch her. He did not say that everything would be well. Perhaps that was why she believed him when he spoke. "What do you wish to do?" The question entered quietly. It was the question she had needed from him before Windholm Hall, and he knew it. Lady Augusta knew it too, for she lowered her eyes to the notebook and let the silence belong to Beatrice. Outside, carriage wheels moved along the street. Somewhere in the house, a servant closed a door. Beatrice thought of Vane House, of Lady Octavia's fan, of Cressida's pearl clasp, of Sir Percival's voice shaping lies into duty. She thought of her mother's name made small by people who had profited from her absence. Fear remained. It did not vanish because truth appeared. It only lost its right to rule. "I want to know what he means to say before he says it," Beatrice answered. "And then I want him to say it where it can be answered." Adrian's eyes held hers. "Publicly, properly," she said. "Before witnesses he respects enough to fear. Before people who heard the forged letter. Before Lady Hardwicke, if she will come. Before your mother, if her grace is willing." Lady Augusta closed the notebook with a satisfied snap. "My dear, I have been willing since the moment Sir Percival sent that vulgar note. He will try to make me look vindictive. Then do not be vindictive," Adrian said. "Be exact." The advice steadied her, because it did not ask her to be softer than the moment required. Beatrice reached for the ivory dance card and drew the old frayed cord through her fingers. "He has called me dependent for years. He has called my mother foolish. He has spent money my father meant to protect me, then called it generosity. I do not want revenge." She lifted her eyes. "I want the room to know which of us has been living on charity." Adrian's expression changed, and for a moment his composure nearly broke. Not into passion, not into impropriety, but into visible pride so restrained, it felt more intimate than praise. "Then that is what the room shall know." Lady Augusta rose. "I will send invitations for a small gathering tomorrow afternoon. Not a party, not a trial. A conversation society will be too curious to refuse and too well-bred to interrupt. My solicitor will attend as an old friend with papers in his case. Lady Hardwicke will come because she dislikes being used as scenery for cruelty." Beatrice looked from Lady Augusta to Adrian. "And Sir Percival, he will come," Adrian said. "He believes fear has already done its work." Beatrice picked up the dance card and the note from her mother. The two objects fit together in her hand, one public, one private, both rescued from people who had tried to define them. "Then let him believe so until tomorrow." Adrian moved toward the door, then stopped. "Miss Arden." She looked up. "Yes, Your Grace. When you enter that room, I will stand beside you if you wish it, behind you if you prefer, across the room if that gives you strength. But I will not stand in your place." For a heartbeat, Beatrice could not answer. Then she folded her mother's note carefully and slipped it into the torn glove with the copied entries. "Beside me," she said, "but not too close." His mouth softened. "As you wish." Lady Augusta's eyes warmed with something like approval. "Good now, we shall repair that glove enough to survive one more battle. And then we shall repair London's understanding of Miss Beatrice Arden." Beatrice looked down at the torn seam and the papers hidden within it. For years she had been told that dignity meant silence. Tomorrow she would learn whether dignity could also have a voice. She felt fear rise again, cold and familiar. This time, she did not mistake it for warning. It was only the body recognizing a door about to open. "I will walk in myself," Spet said. "Let Sir Percival bring whatever truth he thinks he owns." Lady Augusta Vale arranged the drawing room as other women arranged flowers, with an eye for beauty and a sharper eye for consequence. By 3 o'clock the next afternoon, every chair at Alder-mere House had been placed with intention. Lady Hardwicke sat near the hearth, dignified and visibly displeased. To have learned her charity ball had been used as a stage for cruelty. Mrs. Bellamy, widow of a judge, and invincible in matters of propriety, occupied the chair beside her. Lord Westbury's aunt had come, because she knew every household in Mayfair and remembered every contradiction spoken in one. Near the escritoire, Mr. Harcourt, the solicitor from Lincoln's Inn, waited with a leather case at his feet, and the expression of a man prepared to be underestimated. Adrian stood beside the mantel, silent, dark, and exact. He had kept his promise, not too close, not too far, close enough that Beatrice could feel his steadiness without having to lean upon it. She sat beside Lady Augusta with the torn glove folded in her lap, repaired just enough to hold its secrets one final time. The ivory dance card rested beneath her fingers. The old frayed cord had been tucked away in tissue, and the newer silk lay against the card like a question waiting to be answered. Beatrice's grey gown had been brushed and pressed. It remained plain. Lady Augusta had offered a finer one, and Beatrice had refused with gratitude. Today she did not wish to look rescued. She wished to look unmistakably herself. "You are pale," Lady Augusta observed without turning her head. "I am frightened," Beatrice said. "Good. Only fools enter a trap without fear. Is this a trap?" "Certainly. The difference is that this time we chose the room." The words steadied her, more than comfort would have done. Across the room, Adrian's gaze met hers for one breath. No command passed between them. No rescue, only recognition. Then Harris announced the Vanes. Sir Percival entered first, dressed with grave elegance and carrying injury like a medal pinned to his chest. Lady Octavia followed in deep violet silk, her fan already open, her smile arranged for sympathy. Cressida came last, dressed in pale cream, and wearing the pearl clasp at her throat. Beatrice saw it at once. The jewel seemed brighter in the afternoon light, more vulgar now that she knew what had paid for it. Cressida saw Beatrice looking and lifted her chin. It was a small mistake. Several women noticed. Lady Augusta rose only slightly, which was somehow more intimidating than a full greeting. "Sir Percival, Lady Octavia, Miss Vane." "How kind of you to come," Sir Percival bowed. "Your Grace's invitation suggested urgency. It suggested clarity. A rare thing in society," Lady Octavia said. "Especially when young women permit feeling to cloud judgment." Beatrice did not answer. She had learned that silence could be surrender. Today, it could also be bait. Cressida's eyes moved around the room, counting witnesses. Her confidence dimmed when she saw Lady Hardwicke and Mr. Harcourt. "I did not realize this was to be so formal," she said. Lady Augusta smiled. "My dear, formality is society's way of preventing people from pretending later that they misunderstood." Sir Percival's mouth tightened. He looked toward Adrian. "Your Grace, before this proceeds, I must protest the impropriety of discussing family matters before outsiders." Adrian did not move. "Miss Arden's character was discussed before outsiders at Lady Burnham's table. I see no reason truth should be treated with less hospitality than slander." Mrs. Bellamy made a soft approving sound. Lady Octavia's fan quickened. Sir Percival chose a chair but did not sit comfortably in it. "Then let us be brief. My niece has been distressed, fanciful, and perhaps influenced by attention beyond her station. We have tried to handle the matter privately." "Privately," Lady Augusta said, "is often where injustice fattens." Cressida looked at Beatrice. "You see, you've made everyone think us monsters. After all Mamma has done for you." "What has Lady Octavia done for me?" Beatrice asked. The question was calm. It entered the room cleanly. Cressida blinked. "She took you in after my father died, when you had nowhere else." Beatrice's fingers rested on the dance card. "That is the story I was told." Sir Percival leaned forward. "It is not a story. It is fact. Then facts will survive questions." That answer shifted the room. Not dramatically. A few glances moved. Mr. Harcourt opened his case with quiet precision, then closed it again, as though reminding the Vanes that paper could wait until speech had trapped itself. Lady Octavia intervened with a sigh, so artful it might have earned applause under different circumstances. "Beatrice, this bitterness is painful to witness. We have overlooked much. Your nervous temperament, your unfortunate hopes after the Duke's kindness. Even the letter." "Which letter?" Lady Hardwicke asked. Her voice was mild, but her eyes were not. Cressida seized the moment, just as Lady Augusta had predicted she would. She opened her reticule and drew out the forged letter. "This letter," she said. "I did not want to produce it again, but if Beatrice insists upon accusing us, perhaps everyone should understand why we became concerned." Beatrice felt Adrian's attention sharpen across the room. He did not speak. Cressida unfolded the page and held it with a tragic little tremor. It was written to His Grace by Beatrice, or so it seemed to me. "Read it," Lady Augusta said. Cressida hesitated. She had expected resistance, not permission. Then she began, voice soft and wounded. "Your Grace, if you would only understand how little remains to me, and how much I have hoped since our dance, I would be the most grateful creature in England. I have no fortune, but I would devote myself to any arrangement that secured your protection." She stopped there, allowing the shame to hang. In another room, with fewer witnesses and more appetite, it might have done its work. Here it sounded strangely theatrical. Beatrice looked at Lady Hardwicke, who looked unimpressed. Mrs. Bellamy looked offended by the prose. Mr. Harcourt looked faintly curious. Lady Augusta looked as if she had expected worse from better people. Sir Percival spread his hands. "You see our difficulty. We wish to spare Miss Arden further humiliation." "How generous," Adrian said. Sir Percival flinched almost imperceptibly. Cressida turned toward him with wounded brightness. "Your Grace, I know it must embarrass you. I'm sorry. I only thought you should know she had formed expectations." Adrian's face did not change. "Did you?" "Yes. Before or after you wrote my name over another on her dance card." Cressida's mouth parted. "I don't know what you mean." Beatrice lifted the ivory card. She did not thrust it forward. She simply held it, where the afternoon light could touch the erased line beneath Adrian's name. "The card remembers more than people think." Lady Octavia laughed softly. "Now we are to hear testimony from a dance card." "No," Beatrice said. "From the person who altered it." Cressida's hand closed around the forged letter. "You cannot prove I altered anything. I did not ask you to confess yet." The room went very still. Lady Augusta lowered her gaze to hide a flicker of satisfaction. Beatrice turned to Cressida fully. "I have only one question about the letter." "Then ask it," Cressida said too quickly. The phrase "most grateful creature," why did you choose it? Color moved into Cressida's cheeks. "I did not choose it, you wrote it." "No. I never used that phrase. Perhaps desperation improved your vocabulary." "You used it last winter," Beatrice said, "in the morning room at Vane House. Lady Octavia praised her spaniel for obedience, and you said gratitude was charming in the properly bred. Then you called the dog a most grateful creature. You laughed because I was in the room." Cressida's eyes flashed toward her mother. Lady Octavia's fan stilled. Sir Percival spoke at once. "This is absurd. Families repeat phrases." "It proves nothing." "Not alone," Beatrice said. "So let us add paper." She looked at Mr. Harcourt. He inclined his head, but did not yet open his case. Beatrice continued, before anyone could accuse the solicitor of leading her. "The letter was not written on my paper. I own very little. My stationery is coarse, bought by the choir, and usually kept in the mending room for lists Lady Octavia asks me to copy. This page is finer, Vane House paper. The watermark sits near the lower fold. His Grace saw it at Lady Burnham's dinner." Adrian spoke at last. "I did." Cressida's grip on the page tightened. "Beatrice uses house paper when she pleases. She is always in the drawers." "Am I?" Beatrice asked. "Then which drawer holds this paper?" Cressida's mouth opened, then closed. It was a small failure, but every trained woman in the room saw it. Lady Hardwicke's brows rose. Lady Octavia stepped in. "Cressida cannot be expected to know every household drawer. This is unseemly." "Then perhaps you know, Lady Octavia," Beatrice said. "The paper is kept in the upper right drawer of the rosewood desk in your sitting room. I know because you had me address invitations from it last Tuesday." Cressida was there. She corrected a name because she disliked the lady's bonnet. Mrs. Bellamy coughed once, which might have been laughter in morning dress. Sir Percival stood. "Enough. This spectacle has gone far beyond propriety." Adrian's voice cut through the room, quiet and absolute. "Sit down." Sir Percival stared at him. For a moment his pride fought his sense. Then rank won. He sat. Beatrice felt the old terror rise at the sight of Sir Percival's anger, but it no longer owned her voice. She looked back to Cressida. The pearl clasp at her throat trembled with her breathing. "One more question," Beatrice said. "When you found this letter among my things, where exactly was it? In your room. Where in my room? In your sewing box. Under what?" Cressida's eyes flickered. "Thread. There is no thread in that box. I keep thread in the mending room, because Lady Octavia says my chamber is too small for clutter. In my sewing box there are needles, old lace, a dented thimble, and a hidden place beneath the lining where I kept my mother's dance card after you tried to take it." Lady Octavia's face went white with anger. "Beatrice, if Cressida found a letter there, she also found the card." But she did not mention it, because she already knew what was written on it. Cressida stood so quickly her chair struck the carpet behind her. "You're twisting everything. You always do this. You stand there looking wounded, and everyone thinks you're good." Beatrice rose too, slower. "No, Cressida, I stand here because you sent me across a ballroom, expecting me to be refused. I am still standing because the man you chose noticed the cruelty before he noticed the joke." Cressida looked toward Adrian, desperate now. "Your Grace, you can't believe this." Adrian's expression did not soften. "Miss Vane, you will answer Miss Arden." "Not me." The words struck the room and left no shelter. Cressida's lips parted, but no answer came. Sir Percival's hand closed over the arm of his chair. Lady Octavia's fan hung motionless in her lap. And Beatrice, still holding the ivory dance card, understood that the trap had closed, not around her, but around the people who had mistaken her silence for emptiness. Cressida looked at Beatrice as though the answer had been stolen from her before she could speak it. The forged letter trembled in her hand. All the little arts that had served her for years, the wounded lashes, the pretty hesitation, the delicate tremor in her voice, seemed suddenly useless in a room that had grown tired of being charmed. Lady Augusta did not move. Lady Hardwicke watched from beside the hearth, with the grave attention of a hostess who had discovered her own ballroom had been turned into a weapon. Mr. Harcourt opened his leather case at last. The small sound of the clasp releasing made Cressida flinch. "Miss Vane," Adrian said, still facing her, "you were asked a question." Cressida's gaze darted to Sir Percival. He did not help her. That was her first lesson in the value of people who used others as shields. Lady Octavia whispered, "Cressida, darling, say nothing more." "But I didn't mean for it to become so ugly," Cressida burst out. The room went utterly still. Sir Percival closed his eyes for one brief moment. Lady Octavia's fan slipped from her fingers into her lap. Cressida seemed to hear what she had confessed only after the words had left her. She clutched the forged letter to her chest. "I mean the dance card, not the letter. I only meant the dance card." Beatrice felt the old pain rise, but it did not take command. "You meant me to be refused. Everyone is refused sometimes," Cressida said, with a desperate little laugh. "You always act as if your feelings are more important than anyone else's." "No," Beatrice said. "I learned to act as if they were not important at all." "That was the arrangement you preferred." Lady Hardwicke spoke then, her voice cool. "Miss Vane, did you write the Duke of Alder-mere's name on Miss Arden's card?" Cressida swallowed. "Yes, but it was only a foolish jest." "A jest requires amusement on both sides," Lady Augusta said. "Otherwise it is merely cruelty seeking a prettier name." Mr. Harcourt laid several papers on the table. "Before we proceed to the letter, Your Grace, perhaps Miss Arden's other concern should be placed in order." Sir Percival stood again. "I will not have my private accounts poured through in a drawing room." Adrian turned his head. "You will have them examined here, or you will have them examined elsewhere with far less sympathy." Sir Percival's face darkened. "You exceed yourself, Your Grace." "No," Adrian said. "I outrank you. I have been careful not to abuse that fact. Do not invite me to remember it." The words were quiet, but they settled over the room like iron. Sir Percival sat. Mr. Harcourt adjusted his spectacles and looked to Beatrice. "Miss Arden, You copied certain entries from ledgers kept at Vane House. Is that correct? Yes. Did anyone instruct you what to copy? No. Why did you choose these entries? Beatrice drew the repaired glove from her lap and unfolded the papers herself. She did not hand them to Adrian. She did not look to Lady Augusta. She placed them before Mr. Harcourt with her own hand. Because my initials appeared beside payments that were never made to me. Because I was told my father left nothing. Because I saw my cousin wearing jewels bought, in part, with money marked under my settlement. Cressida's hand flew to the pearl clasp at her throat. Lady Octavia caught the gesture too late. Mrs. Bellamy leaned forward. Mr. Harcourt compared the copied entries with documents from his case. The late Mr. Edmund Arden did establish a settlement for his daughter. Harcourt and Bell was not the original firm of record, but we were asked to inquire after irregular replies from Sir Percival Vane. Several requests went unanswered. These copied entries correspond with sums that should have been held in trust or accounted for separately. Sir Percival forced a laugh. Household maintenance, education, clothing. A young dependent consumes more than sentiment admits. Beatrice turned to him. Then, why was I told there was no settlement? The question was simple. No one rescued him from it. He spread his hands. You were a child. Details would have distressed you. I am not a child now. He looked away first. That was when the room understood. Not every legal fact had been argued. Not every account settled. But society did not always require a judge to know when a man had hidden money beneath virtue. Lady Augusta lifted her chin. Mr. Harcourt, what remedy exists? Repayment, proper accounting, and replacement of trustees at minimum. If Sir Percival refuses cooperation, a petition in Chancery would be appropriate. The word moved through the room with enough weight to make Lady Octavia pale. Sir Percival's respectability had been built for drawing rooms, not petitions. Lady Hardwicke set down her teacup. I cannot imagine continuing my acquaintance with a household under such uncertainty. Mrs. Bellamy added, Nor can I. That was not a shout, it was worse. It was social exile beginning in perfectly modulated voices. Lady Octavia gripped her fan. You cannot mean to punish my daughter for a misunderstanding. Your daughter forged a humiliation, and then repeated it as concern, Lady Augusta said. That is not misunderstanding. That is character. Cressida's eyes filled, but no one softened. I only wanted her to stop looking so noble, she whispered. She had nothing, and still people felt sorry for her. It was unbearable. Beatrice looked at her cousin, and the strangest thing happened. The anger remained, but pity entered beside it. Not forgiveness. Not yet. Perhaps not ever in the way Cressida wanted. But pity for a girl who had been handed silk, jewels, and admiration, yet still could not bear the sight of dignity in someone poorer. You could have let me stand by the lemonade, Beatrice said. You could have danced and smiled and been admired. It still would not have been enough. Cressida wept then, silently and angrily, because even her tears had lost their audience. Sir Percival made one last attempt. And what of Marianne Arden? He said. The name struck Beatrice, but did not break her. Adrian's hand flexed once at his side. Lady Augusta rose before he could speak. Yes. Let us speak of Marianne Arden. Sir Percival's confidence faltered. Lady Augusta crossed to the table and opened her small leather notebook. Marianne Arden was a woman of excellent sense who refused to place her daughter's security entirely under your control. I recorded that impression myself years ago. If you intended to suggest scandal, do so now and attach your name to the lie. Sir Percival said nothing. His silence had once frightened Beatrice. Now it answered for him. Lady Augusta closed the notebook. Marianne Arden's name is not yours to soil. Beatrice held the ivory dance card against her palm. For a moment, she felt her mother not as a ghost of illness and loss, but as a woman who had once chosen protection for her child and been punished for it by lies. Thank you, Your Grace, she said. Lady Augusta's gaze softened. No, my dear, thank your mother. She resisted him first. Adrian stepped forward at last, but only as far as the edge of the table. Sir Percival, you will cooperate with Mr. Harcourt before the week is out. you will retract any suggestion that Miss Arden wrote to me seeking marriage or money. Lady Octavia, my mother will inform the necessary hostesses that Miss Arden was maligned. Miss Vane, you will return the letter." Cressida placed it on the table as though surrendering a crown. "And the clasp," Lady Augusta said. Lady Octavia gasped. Cressida covered the pearl at her throat. Beatrice looked at Lady Augusta in surprise. The Dowager Duchess remained serene. "If it was purchased with Miss Arden's funds, it is not yours to wear." Slowly, with shaking fingers, Cressida unclasped the pearls and set them beside the forged letter. The small sound they made against the wood seemed to finish something. Not everything, but enough. Beatrice felt the room look at her differently. Not with hunger, not with pity, with recognition. Lady Hardwicke rose and came to her. "Miss Arden, I owe you an apology. My house failed to protect a guest." "You did not know," Beatrice said. "I know now," Lady Hardwicke replied. "That is when responsibility begins." Mrs. Bellamy nodded. Others followed in smaller ways. A look, a bowed head, a silence free of contempt. The Vaners were dismissed without anyone using the word. Sir Percival bowed stiffly and left with Lady Octavia and Cressida, who walked as if the floor had become unfamiliar beneath her. When the door closed behind them, the drawing-room did not burst into noise. It breathed. Lady Augusta moved to the pianoforte and spoke quietly to the young woman seated there. A few soft notes rose into the air, simple and restrained. Adrian turned to Beatrice. The whole room watched, but this time the watching did not feel cruel. "Miss Arden," he said, "may I ask for one final dance? This time only if it's your wish." Her throat tightened. The first time, she had crossed a ballroom because others sent her. This time no one moved her. No one held her roof, her bread, or her reputation over her head. Beatrice looked at the dance card in her hand, at the replaced silk cord, at the space where his name had once been written to shame her. Then she looked at him. "Yes, Your Grace," she said. "This time I choose it." He offered his hand. She placed hers in it, and he led her into the cleared space at the center of the drawing-room. The dance was small, almost private despite the witnesses. No glittering ballroom, no cruel cousin waiting to laugh, no family measuring her humiliation. Only music, restraint, and the quiet astonishment of standing where shame had been meant to end, and finding instead that something had begun. As they turned once beneath the afternoon light, Adrian spoke low enough that only she could hear. "May I court you properly, Miss Arden?" Beatrice did not answer at once. She let the question settle where commands had once lived. "Yes," she said at last, "but not because I am grateful." His eyes held hers. "No, and not because you saved me. You saved the proof. You saved your voice. I only learned where to stand." The answer warmed something in her that fear had kept cold for years. Around them, the music continued. Beatrice Arden, who had been sent once to be refused, finished the dance not as a spectacle, not as a dependent, and not as a grateful creature. She finished it as a woman believed. 3 weeks after the drawing-room at Alder-mere House fell silent around the truth, Beatrice Arden arrived at Wyndholm Hall beneath a sky washed clean by morning rain. The estate rose from the Oxfordshire countryside, with a quietness that unsettled her more than grandeur would have done. Vane House had always seemed to listen for mistakes. Wyndholm Hall seemed to listen for music. Its long, pale front looked across lawns silvered with damp, and beyond them, fields rolled into a soft distance, broken by hedgerows, elms, and the darker line of woodland. Lady Augusta sat beside Beatrice in the carriage, gloved hands folded over her cane, pretending not to watch her too closely. "You may breathe, Miss Arden," she said. "The house has survived dukes, creditors, bad poets, and one Christmas when the kitchen chimney failed. It will not collapse because you admire it." Beatrice smiled, despite the tightness in her chest. "I was not admiring it. Then you were judging it, which is even better." The carriage slowed before the front steps. Adrian stood waiting below the portico, dressed not for London but for the country. Dark coat, plain waistcoat, boots still marked faintly by the stable yard. He looked less like the feared Duke of drawing-rooms, and more like the master of a place that expected work, as well as ceremony. When he opened the carriage door, he did not reach for Beatrice until she offered her hand. That small restraint still moved her. It had become a language between them. "Miss Arden," he said. "Welcome to Windholm. Your Grace." Her foot touched the gravel. No one hurried her. No one corrected how she stepped, where she looked, or how long she paused. Lady Augusta accepted Adrian's arm and glanced toward Beatrice. "There, you are inside the county now. No one from Mayfair can hear you think." "I am not certain that is true," Beatrice said. "Lady Hardwicke hears most things eventually." Adrian's mouth softened. "Then we shall give her only respectable rumours." Respectable rumours had already begun. Sir Percival had withdrawn from several clubs under the excuse of health. Mr. Harcourt had secured the first repayment and arranged new trustees beyond Vane influence. Lady Octavia's invitations had thinned so severely that even Cressida had stopped pretending illness caused her absence from parties. The pearl clasp had been returned, sold, and applied toward Beatrice's account, though Beatrice had declined to ask what it fetched. The object had never mattered. What mattered was that it no longer touched Cressida's throat like a triumph. Nell Hopkins had arrived at Windholm Hall 2 days earlier to take a respectable place under the housekeeper. When Beatrice entered the great hall, Nell stood among the servants with shining eyes and a face trying desperately to remain proper. Beatrice did not embarrass her before the household. She only met her gaze and gave the slightest nod. Nell's smile flickered and disappeared into discipline, but it had been enough. The welcome was formal without being cold. Housekeeper, butler, footman, maids, all arranged in proper order. Beatrice had expected to feel inspected. Instead, she felt acknowledged. That was more difficult. A person could resist contempt. Kindness required one to loosen armor that had taken years to fasten. After luncheon, Lady Augusta retired under the firm claim that everyone under 30 exhausted her, which included Beatrice by charity rather than mathematics. Adrian offered to show Beatrice the South Gardens, with the housekeeper's niece, walking at a visible distance as companion until Lady Augusta returned to duty. The propriety was so carefully managed that Beatrice almost laughed. Adrian noticed. "Have I erred?" "No. You have constructed a fortress of etiquette. I was advised that fortresses are sometimes reassuring. By your mother, by fear of you thinking me high-handed again." The honesty stopped her on the path. He stopped as well, leaving the proper distance between them. Rain clung to the box hedges and gave the air a green, living scent. Beatrice looked toward the lawns, where a gardener trimmed roses near a low wall. "I did think it once. You were right. I do not wish to spend my life being right about your mistakes. Nor do I." There was no cleverness in his answer. That helped. They walked on. He showed her the old orangery, the chapel, where his parents had married, the East Meadow leased to tenant farmers, and the schoolroom Lady Augusta had once used for estate children during harsh winters. He did not display wealth as bait. He showed responsibility. Roofs repaired, rents reduced after flooding, widows' cottages maintained because his father had neglected them and Adrian refused to inherit neglect without correcting it. Beatrice listened, asking questions that at first surprised him and then pleased him. By the time they reached the long gallery, the afternoon light had turned amber along the floorboards. Portraits lined the walls. Duchess after duchess looked down in silk, satin, lace, and varying degrees of patience. "They are formidable," Beatrice said. "Most of them were. Are you warning me?" "No. Introducing you." At the far end of the gallery, on a small table beneath a portrait of Adrian's grandmother, rested the ivory dance card. Beatrice knew it before she reached it. The card had been restored, not made new. The faded painted flowers remained faint. The erased line beneath Adrian's name had not been disguised. The old frayed cord lay beside it in a narrow glass case, while the new silk cord, Lady Augusta's gift, had been threaded through with careful hands. Beatrice stood before it without speaking. Adrian remained a few feet away. "I asked whether it should be cleaned more thoroughly," he said. "The restorer advised against it." He said too much repair would erase its history. A wise man. I thought so. Beatrice touched the edge of the table, not the card. Why is it here? Because this house has many portraits of women who were recorded because they married into it. I thought it should also hold proof of a woman seen before. She agreed to belong anywhere. Her eyes stung. She looked down, but not in shame. You are becoming dangerously eloquent, Your Grace. I'm desperate to impress you. The line was dry enough to make her laugh, and the sound startled them both. It moved through the long gallery lightly, touching portraits, polished wood, and all the years when Beatrice had swallowed laughter, because it might be mocked. Adrian's expression changed. Not triumph, wonder quickly controlled. Beatrice, he said. It was the first time he had used her name without Miss Arden before it. The gallery seemed to hold its breath. Adrian, she answered, because some doors opened only when one stepped through them. He reached into his coat and withdrew a small folded paper, then stopped himself with an expression of faint self-reproach. I had prepared remarks. Of course you had. My mother called them legal in tone. Were they? Painfully. He set the paper on the table beside the dance card. Then I will do without them. Beatrice turned toward him fully. The companion remained visible at the far end of the gallery, pretending deep interest in a window latch. The house was proper. The moment was private enough. Adrian drew a breath. I will not ask you to marry me because your fortune is restored, because your reputation is safe, or because society now finds it convenient to admire what it once overlooked. I will not ask because I helped expose Sir Percival. I did less than I wished and more wrongly than I should have before I learned. Adrian, let me finish, or I shall become legal again. She closed her mouth, but she smiled. He saw it and steadied. I ask because you stood before cruelty and did not let it teach you cruelty in return. Because you were frightened and acted anyway. Because you demanded that I learn the difference between protection and partnership. Because when I imagine this house with you in it, I do not imagine you ornamenting it. I imagine you correcting it. The tears came then, quiet and unwanted but not humiliating. He saw and did not rush them. I want a duchess with a voice of her own, he said. I want a wife who will tell me when I am wrong before all England suffers from it. I want the woman who crossed a ballroom because she had no choice, and later walked into a drawing room because she had chosen truth. Beatrice, will you marry me? She looked at the restored dance card, at the old scar of erased ink, at the name written once to shame her, and now preserved as the beginning of being believed. Yes, she said, but I must be difficult sometimes. I am relying on it. And Nell stays if she wishes, already arranged, and my settlement remains mine, entirely. And if Lady Augusta bullies me, you may appeal to me, though I warn you my record against her is poor. Beatrice laughed again, and this time it did not surprise her. Adrian offered his hand, palm open, waiting. She placed hers in it. No audience leaned in to see her refused. No cousin waited to laugh. No guardian measured what could be taken. Only the long gallery, the watching portraits, the soft spill of evening light, and a future that did not feel like a cage. From somewhere below, a pianoforte began, hesitant at first, then sure. Lady Augusta, Beatrice suspected, had never truly retired in her life. Adrian looked toward the sound, then back to her. One dance, he asked. Here, only if it's your wish. She stepped closer, still within the boundaries of propriety, and entirely beyond the reach of shame. It is. He led her into the open length of the gallery, and they danced without spectacle, without applause, without cruelty disguised as entertainment. Her gown brushed the polished floor. His hand guided, never compelled. Outside, Windholm Hall settled into evening, lamps blooming one by one in the windows. Beatrice thought of her mother's note, her father's care, Nell's courage, Lady Augusta's fierce fairness, and the cold ballroom where one old card had nearly been used to ruin her. It had not ruined her, it had carried her here. When the music softened, Adrian bent his head just enough for her alone. Welcome home, Beatrice. She looked past him to the restored card beneath the portrait, then back to the man who had first seen the damage, and waited until she chose the repair. "Yes," she said. "I think I am."